Sayın Bakanım,
Distinguished Minister, esteemed Dr.
Sayın Bakanım,
Dr. Fatih Birol,
Uluslararası Enerji Ajansı Başkanı
distinguished
Sayın Dr. Fatih Birol, Sabancı
Chair of
Üniversitesi
the
Kurucu
founding
Mütevelli Başkanı
Board of
Sayın
Trustees,
İlber
distinguished
Sabancı,
Yusuf Leblebici,
değerli
esteemed
rektör hocamız
rectors,
Yusuf Leblebici, çok değerli
ambassadors,
rektörlerimiz,
consulates, esteemed
büyükelçiler,
participants, and distinguished
konsoloslar,
members of the
değerli
press,
katılımcılar
welcome
ve değerli
to the
basın
90th
mensupları.
ICAC conference.
Geleneksel konferanslar serisinin 19.suna
As you know,
hepiniz hoş
energy
geldiniz.
security
Bildiğiniz gibi enerji
has become a
güvenliği
topic
son
addressed at
yıllarda
a broader
giderek daha
scope in
geniş
the
bir
recent
çerçevede
years.
ele alınan bir
Energy
başlık haline
supply
gelmiş durumda.
is obviously
Enerji
maintaining its
arzı
position
elbette
to
bu
be a
çerçevenin
founding
temel
element of this
unsurlarından
issue,
biri
but with the
olmaya devam
geopolitical
ederken,
issues,
jeopolitik
critical
gelişmelerle
minerals and
birlikte
rare,
kritik mineraller ve
again,
nadir
elements
toprak elementleri
broaden this
konunun
topic even
kapsamını
further,
daha da
specifically
genişletiyor.
with the rapid
Özellikle
dissemination
temiz
of
enerji
clean energy,
teknolojilerinin
lithium,
hızla yaygınlaştığı
cobalt,
günümüzde lityum,
graphite, and
kobalt,
copper, which are
nikel,
critical minerals,
grafit ve bakır gibi kritik
come
mineraller
forth
enerji
as
dönüşümünün
an
ayrılmaz
important
bir parçası
element
olarak
of
öne
energy
çıkıyor.
supply.
Bu
And
minerallerin ardından
fragilities
yaşanan
globally
kırılganlıklar
in
ise
the
küresel olarak
supply of these
Türkiye'nin enerji
minerals
güvenliği
lead countries to
yaklaşımlarını
rethink
yeniden
their approach to
düşünmelerine
energy.
ve değerlendirmelerine
From
neden oluyor.
Turkey's perspective,
Bu tabloya Türkiye'miz açısından
we observe
baktığımızda
both
hem
risks
riskleri hem
and
de
important
önemli fırsat
opportunities. Our
alanlarını
country, with
gözlemliyoruz.
its industrial framework,
Ülkemiz
infrastructure, as well as its
sonraki
geopolitical
ekonomi ve enerji
position,
dönüşüm hedefleriyle
sits at an intersection where different resources of energy lie. So today's conference will address today and the future of energy security, risks regarding critical minerals, and possible solutions to these risks. So we have various team panelists that will take the stage, and also we are going to launch the report titled Turkey's Critical Energy Minerals Outlook. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite distinguished Güler Sabancı, chairperson of the founding board of trustees at Sabancı University. Good morning. Welcome to Sabancı Center, and as you see, we have renovated this building. We've celebrated our centennial as the Sabancı community, Sabancı Holding, so welcome once again. Esteemed Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Alparslan Bayraktar, distinguished Fatih Birol, valuable stakeholders of the energy, mining, industry, technology, and climate world, distinguished participants. Welcome to the Energy Security, Present and Future in the World and Turkey, Risks and Solutions in Critical Minerals Conference, organized by Sabancı University, Istanbul International Energy and Climate Center, ICAC. Once again, welcome.
Evet.
We're witnessing significant developments in the field of energy, which is one of the most important inputs of our daily lives and social and economic development. The world's energy demand continues to increase, and energy security is severely affected by many factors such as geopolitical developments, trade dynamics, critical minerals, and the adverse effects of climate change. And as a result of all of these, energy security has now become an economic and national security issue. Important dynamics continue to take place in the subsectors of energy, in fuels and technologies, as well as in the energy-climate relationship. In a moment, we're going to discuss the latest developments, the new dynamics ahead of us, some solutions for a safer and more sustainable energy future. As a tradition of the ICAC conferences for the past 15 years, we will once again have the privilege of listening to Dr. Fatih Birol, regarding all of these topics. Mr. Birol continues to make us really proud with his important contributions to the issues regarding global energy. And we are following his very active role in solving many regional problems, from the security of the world energy sector to climate change and environmental issues. And also, we have with us our esteemed Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. I've had a chance to talk to him moments ago. When we first started ICAC, he was not a minister, but he has always supported us from day one. So we'd like to thank him very much on behalf of all the sector representatives and ICAC members for accepting our invitation despite his busy schedule. Distinguished participants, our country maintains its position as one of the largest and most dynamic energy sectors in Europe and the world. Our per capita energy consumption is still half the OECD average, and our energy growth dynamics are very robust. And significant steps are being taken by both the public, as always, and the private sectors to ensure this growth is secure, competitive, and sustainable. As a result, our energy infrastructure is rapidly developing. For example, we see that we rank among top 5 in Europe in renewable energy, and we also are rising to higher ranks, and we can move on to higher ranks with investments, and I'm sure Mr. Minister will discuss them in a bit. And it's possible to multiply these examples. Our electricity grids are among the largest in Europe and continue to grow. Steps are being taken to develop energy technologies and supply chains. And as Mr. Minister will address with us shortly, he will talk about strategies and priorities regarding Turkey's energy and critical mineral policies. So we're going to see what lies ahead. Distinguished participants, as you know, ICAC each year publishes its pioneering energy outlook studies of the industry. And ICAC, on a subject that has become one of the most important issues worldwide recently, contains multifaceted risks and opportunities for Turkey, conducted the Turkey Critical Energy Minerals Outlook Study. And it is the 6th in the Outlook series, which is, once again, first of its kind in Turkey, with a participatory approach and common sense with public and private sector and academic stakeholders and shared mind. And ICAC I will also present the study shortly. We live in a world where the impact of AI is seen in every field. And I find it very important that we create value and solutions for problems and issues through collective intelligence, science-based collaborations, between the academia and the business world. And it's becoming more and more important to collaborate and develop a perspective together. So with this perspective, we have established ICAC with this collective intelligence and by looking to the future, and it's a pioneering model and a center in Turkey. Bringing together leading organizations that add value to their sectors, ICAC continues to contribute to a safer and a future with safer and more sustainable energy through collective intelligence and collaborations. Therefore, as I conclude my remarks, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to ICAC supporters, ICAC board members, ALJ Holding, Borusan ENBW, BP, Enerjisa, Eren Holding, ING Bank, Sanko Energy, Shell, Sokar, and Zorlu Energy for their continued support in expanding and deepening ICEC's activities. Thank you very much. I also would like to welcome Hitachi Energy, a new member of the ICEC Board of Directors. And as always, I hope this will strengthen and contribute to our work towards a safer and more sustainable future. I hope this conference will be fruitful and, again, essential for the future. And Happy New Year in advance. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Güler Sabancı, Chairperson of the Founding Board of Trustees. And I'm going to invite the ICEC Director to present the Critical Energy Minerals Outlook Study. Esteemed Minister, distinguished Dr. Fatih Birol, distinguished Güler Sabancı, our Rector, esteemed members of the Board of ICEC, distinguished representatives from both the public and private sector, I would like to present the second report this year, which is the Critical Energy Minerals Outlook in Turkey. So I will highlight some of the findings to make better use of our time, because we have very prominent speakers who will follow me. So I'll briefly talk about the findings and some of the recommendations. First of all, I should say that Dr. Fatih Birol recommended that we start this study and guided us throughout. So special thanks to Dr. Birol, because we realized once again how important this study is for the country, and we hope this will improve awareness in the industry. I'll start globally. I'm sure Dr. Fatih will give us more details, but what is the main risk globally? We sort of know it, but we've looked at it. Especially in refinery, China is quite prominent here. There are 20 strategic minerals, from gallium to zirconium. These are minerals that are prominent in AI technologies and nuclear technologies, as well as some of the clean energy technologies. But there are 20 very strategic minerals, and China is a leader in 19 of them, with an average of 70%. As you would know, Mr. Minister, in some cases they're over 90% in gallium, graphite, manganese, and other critical minerals, especially in rare earth elements. Critical minerals, I mean, we've also realized during the study, but they are seen to be beyond energy because they intersect many industries. There are those shared with the energy industry, but there are others who are used outside of energy in digital, robotics, AI, as Ms. Sabancı mentioned, in chip technologies, and some more advanced material sciences. So this brings two things. Demand simultaneously arises from various industries, so it's not only by the energy sector, and the supply is on the opposite side. China has great dominance over refining, because it's not enough if you just, extract the minerals. In order to achieve added value in end products, you need to be strong in refining, specifically in high purity processes. And these risks also apply for Turkey, because aside from some critical minerals, we are very much dependent on China and similar dominating countries. So we'll talk about some of these figures to give a better picture. Number one is, yes, we extract the minerals and export them, and do we import them back with added value? So that is exactly the case, as we've seen as a result of this study. For example, copper is a striking example. We are a significant producer of copper. So we have exported $670 million, but we also import over $2 billion. So we have about $1.7 billion worth of import. Lithium, as you would imagine, has become significant with the emergence of electric cars. There's great growth. We have over $1 billion of import of lithium. To reverse that, aluminum is a good example. So we have to bring those in red and give them an upward trend. So, Mr. Minister, with your vision, as you said, we need to create added value and not only extract these minerals and export them, and we strongly support that as ICAC. Distinguished participants, we have an energy model, and we applied that model. So 2035 is an important milestone, and 2053 is our net zero year. So we try to see how the demand will be by 2035. So it's going to rise by 2 to 5 times, and by 2053 we expect them to increase by 3 to 11 times. And 11 happens to be for lithium, because both electric cars, electric vehicles, and e-mobility, as well as energy storing systems, will be using lithium. Rare earth elements, again, for electric cars, magnets, and also wind technologies. So in these areas, we are going to see a growth in demand. Copper will continue to grow, so we expect a demand increase of 3 to 4-fold. And if things remain the way they are, the deficit might increase if we cannot generate added value in our supply. So these are two highlights I'd like to briefly mention. I'm sure Mr. Minister will talk about the situation in our country in greater detail, but this is an important development that we have published our report on critical and strategic minerals. Just like many countries, we have a list or lists of critical and strategic minerals. We looked at the policy priorities as ICAC. So there's this vision of strategic management, and around that there are many things that coincide with the slides I've shown you. More studies, more exploration, more discoveries, but not remaining at the level of extraction, also generating added value towards end products, which should include refining, processing, as well as integrating the manufacturing industry to the process. So what would be a complementary step after that? Of course, a strategy paper, a strategy white paper. We know that it's in the works, and as Güler Sabancı mentioned, this will give us predictability and sustainability. There are risks as well as opportunities. The greatest risk is the energy security vis-à-vis the increasing demand. So unless we have technologies or products or diversity to meet the increasing demand. The second risk is not only linked with the energy sector, there are also non-energy sectors that are strategic. Defense industry, as well as aerospace activities, and there are also other repercussions possible on the current deficit. But there are also many opportunities we've identified. For example, our reserves can grow and we can improve value-added production. Number two, which is something global, and Dr. Fatih also highlighted this as he was guiding us through the process. High concentration, as well as the quest of countries for alternative and reliable suppliers, so not being dependent on a sole country and finding alternatives. So Turkey can become an important player, an actor in this regard, which is a great opportunity. And our domestic market is quite large. It's one of the largest in Europe and top ranking in the world. So we already have an ecosystem feeding itself, being an energy corridor, an energy hub is one of our vision, a part of our vision. So these are all opportunities that need to be tapped into. Of course, to be able to do that, we need to mitigate the risks, eliminate them if possible, and to harness the opportunities. We recommend having a strategic planning vision, and we've always, as always, identified some rooms for improvement. We've identified 6 of them and 6 recommendations that match these areas. A holistic strategic planning should include stock mechanisms. It's already included in the law. There's a special status available. Maybe there can be more details regarding, based on minerals and different mines. High value added, it will increase. We need to develop roadmaps to increase diversification as well as value added generation. The second one is regarding the supply and the inventory itself. Our reserve inventory needs to continue to expand with new explorations, and it's important to have a supply chain inventory from demand to supply. Number 3 is refining. This is once again highlighted here. So our country has the potential to become a player in refining in the region. Of course, it requires long-term planning, strategic investment, but this is one of the recommendations that we put forward. Number 4, to do all of that, as Mr. Fatih always highlights in different reports, the market dynamics alone are not enough on their own. There are various reasons. So we need incentive models for investment. Some countries have started doing that. So maybe Turkey can find an example, a best practice that are fit for the circumstances. Innovation and R&D requires the support of public and private collaboration, and further steps can be taken in these areas. Number 5, again, has to do with our strategic location, diplomacy, and international relations. So that's a separate item on the list. There are things that we can do with suppliers, with markets that are of demand, as well as technology providers. But specifically, I would like to highlight Africa. It's still virgin as a region in terms of reserves. They're quite rich. Of course, we can add Latin America and other regions as well, but mining activities and refining activities in locations where we have strong relations would be a recommendation of HICAC. EU is an important market where we can be positioned as a supplier. Last but not least, International Energy Agency under the leadership of Dr. Fatih has the critical minerals security program. We already know Turkey is a participant to these meetings, but active participant would be helpful for the security of supply in Turkey and globally. Last but not least, we need to maintain a focused approach. So certain minerals and technologies, of course, should be a priority. First and foremost, rare earth elements. So from mining to end products to, permanent magnets, lithium and battery technologies in general. We have strong opportunities both in Turkey and abroad. Of course, we recommend collaborations in technology and copper. As I've highlighted, we need to maintain and improve our position in the copper market. So as I conclude my remarks, I would like to once again reiterate that we didn't do this alone. We've always sought consult from the private sector, from the public sector. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you who've contributed to the success of this report. So you see a QR code on the screen. If you scan it, you can access our report as well as the executive summary. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this will be fruitful for a more secure supply of minerals in Turkey.
Efendim şimdi keynote konuşmalarını
Now
yapmak
I'm going to
üzere
invite
Uluslararası Enerji Ajansı Başkanı
Chairman
ve IKEK
of
Ulusal
the
Başkanı
President of
Sayın
International
Dr.
Energy
Fatih
Agency
Gürel.
and IKEK President, Dr. Fatih Gürel.
Sayın Bakanım,
Esteemed Minister,
değerli Güler Sabancı,
Ms. Güler Sabancı,
Sayın Bakan
and
Yardımcımız,
esteemed Deputy Minister,
kamunun ve özel sektörün değerli temsilcileri,
distinguished participants of the private and public sector, dear friends, I'd like to salute you all respectfully.
hem Güler Hanım, Doğan Bey,
Ms. Güler and Mr. Doğan have mentioned today we are having the 15th of this IKEK meeting. This is a tradition, and perhaps it could be an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time that having this tradition. What we have said in the previous meetings and what has happened, maybe we can discuss all of these issues together. And today I'll give you some information with respect to the world energy market, and I'll talk about some main items, especially 7 main titles that affect the world markets of energy. I'd like to talk about this, what has happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. I'll talk about this. But prior to the beginning, even though this is not directly related to energy, there are some issues which affect energy. Indirectly, I'll talk about this, which is the geopolitics. Geopolitics is around the world like a dark cloud. While energy is geopolitics is always intertwined, and it's going to be the case in the future. We underwent petroleum crisis, oil crisis, natural gas crisis, but all these have come together, and geopolitics has never impacted energy sector like this in the world in the past beforehand. While in the critical minerals, in earth minerals, we have seen this. When we have a look at the world politics, we see a tremendous change. Well, for years it's been happening. The alliances among countries have become loosened, and some of them have shattered, and different alliances have become the case now, and they are very crucial on the energy. Well, each and every day it adds much more on top of these layers of dark cloud. Well, and energy security has always been important, but nowadays and in the future, I believe energy security is going to be much more important. And now, after this general overview, by the way, we should remember this all the time when we talk about different topics. I've mentioned 7 main titles, and we'll be talking about them very slowly and surely. Well, one of the first important things is petroleum oil. Well, last year we were together, and everywhere in the world it was mentioned that in the oil markets, more comfortable and more abundant supply would be the case, and the prices would go down. Last year in December we mentioned this here and in other places in the world. Why did we say this? Because demand for petroleum was growing, however, slower than the past. I'll talk about China for a couple of times more. And the second reason is very simple, actually. I say that the 5 aspects,
Kanada,
like
Brezilya,
America,
Arjantin,
Canada,
Libya'dan
Argentina,
muazzam
and
miktarda petrol
in this
geliyor.
Latin America countries,
OPEC ülkesi
other than
içindeki
OPEC countries, we see tremendous
zayıf talep,
demand
çok büyük üretim demek ki
and
son derece
supply
basit.
from these countries, and perhaps it's going to make the prices lower.
Önemli bir
But when we said this, it created a huge discussion in oil markets. And some said that, do you say this because of the climate change? No, it's not about that. And all in all, what happened? When we said this, by the way, oil prices was around $80, but right now it's $60. Well, there was $20 of price decrease, like we had mentioned. And in 2026,
çok büyük
if
sürprizler
not big
olmaz ise,
surprises emerge,
buna benzer
well, similar
seviyedeki petrol piyasalarını görebiliriz. Çünkü
prices
çok fazla
will be the case
petrol
because there is too much oil and the demand is very weak. And I'd like to mention this as well.
fiyatların
Well,
düştüğü dönem
this period when the prices decreased
jeopolitik gerilimin en fazla olduğu
was
dönemlerden
one
bir
of
tanesi.
the times that the geopolitical tension became really high. Well, in the past, when something happened in Middle East, prices was increasing, but the Middle East was really tense, and there were developments in Latin America and Ukraine and in Far Eastern countries, but like we had detected, there was a sharp decrease in the prices. Well, looking ahead, what's going to happen? Well, there is too much uncertainty in the world. That's why we are coming up with different scenarios. There's 2 different scenarios with respect to oil. One is as such, the demand for oil is going to increase by the year 2040, and the other says it's going to come up by 2030, and after reaching to a certain level, it's going to be at that level. There is not a big difference between these 2 scenarios, perhaps. However, the determiner of this will be about
Acaba
these
dünya ulaştırma sektöründeki
questions about
elektrifikasyon
electrification in the world transportation system, especially in the passenger vehicles, in trucks and buses. To what extent the electrification will change? There are different scenarios about that as well, but this is really crucial because transportation sector has 45% of the oil consumption just by itself. For that reason, electrification is really important. This is a big question mark. But in the short run, as I said, oil markets will be comforting for countries like us who import petroleum oil. And the second topic is related to natural gas. Well, in Turkey, in other countries, we mentioned that as well, again, with respect to natural gas. We are going into a very, very easy period for the consumers because we'll see an unprecedented energy, liquefied energy, liquefied natural gas will be available in the market. It's going to be very plenty from Qatar, the US and Canada. 300 billion cubic meter will be the volume of the natural gas that we're speaking. Well, this LNG that is going to be launched to the market in the upcoming 5 years will be like the half of the gas that was launched to the market in the last 40 years. So last year we mentioned the very same thing here and there in the world, and it's going to bring some price decreases in the world. And even more important than this, 75% of this gas will be flexible. Well, it's going to be purchased by whoever wants. Well, it doesn't have to go from country A to country B, so whoever pays the price can purchase the gas. This is an important change. Geopolitically, this is also very significant. Why? Because the markets, natural gas markets up until this time, for many years was the market of the sellers, but right now it is the market of the buyers. Buyers will have an upper hand. For that reason, natural gas, well, Turkey is also included in this case. I'm sure our minister will talk about this in terms of diversification. Turkey has already taken very important steps in the diversification of the LNG purchase. And coal is very crucial as well. In terms of coal, countries have different profiles and perspectives. In some countries, the consumption decreases sharply, and in some countries, the consumption is still rising. Coal means China, because 65% of coal consumption comes from China, and 35% of this comes from all other countries in total. And China, in terms of coal, is still very consistent, and in the US, the domestic market natural gas prices have increased, and we see a little increase on the coal consumption, but in other countries there is decrease in consumption. China, Indonesia, and in India are the users of coal, but there is a trend which shows decrease in the consumption. Well, it's not increasing and decreasing. This flat curve is going to be persistent for a couple of years more. Well, this is something that you hear from me, but I have 500 colleagues that work with me, and you can also receive this information based on our own collaborative works. The fourth title is electricity. And I'd like to talk about this more a bit, because, dear friends, demand for electricity and demand for energy, these two have grown in years. But in the last decade, demand for electricity has grown 2 times more than the general energy growth, and it's going to be growing 6 times higher than energy demand. Well, in electricity, there is a great acceleration in all around the world. Well, we have seen an unprecedented energy consumption in 2025, and in 2026 and in the other years to follow, we'll see many more to follow. Well, the world is electricity consumption, and demand is. What is the reason for this? What is the reason for this sharp increase? Well, we know that there are certain areas that electricity is used in the residential areas, industry, here and there, but there are 3 new areas and new dimensions which triggered this growth. Well, the first of all, as mentioned by Ms. Güler, AI. Well, AI means for this artificial intelligence to be available, there are data centers, and 24/7 electricity is needed in these data centers. While a mid-scale data center consumes the electricity of a city of 100,000 people, and data centers are emerging everywhere in the world. And maybe we should say this, AI something, one of the most consequential technological innovations. For that reason, between the US and China, and there comes India and Europe and Middle East. Well, among these countries, there is an incredible competition for AI. And who is going to win this competition? There are 2 determining factors. Well, whoever is on the forefront on technology with respect to software and other things, and whoever has the electricity will win this competition. Now, China is way too ahead than the US and Europe, because China has electricity, and let me mention this as well. There are many company representatives producing electricity components. I'm sure you know this. Well, in Europe or in US, you want to buy a gas turbine or transformer. If you order today, and they're going to say that it's going to be available before 2030, so you have to wait for it. But in China, after 2 weeks, it's going to be ready, because it's tremendous. They have an incredible infrastructure. For that reason, electricity has become really important, and people, countries are striving for increasing electricity generation. Now, I could say that this is the new trigger for this era of electricity. Perhaps we haven't thought of this, but the numbers dictate this. Well, one of the most important triggers for electricity consumption in the world is the increase of the ACs. Yes, AC, air conditioners. These air conditioner devices that we know. As the climate change persists, and as the income of the poor countries increases, people buy AC to have a comfortable life. And there is a big gap. For example, in the US and in Japan, 90% of the houses have AC. In Nigeria, it is only 5%. And in India, it is 20%. In Indonesia, it is 20%. In these countries, as the AC number increases, by the way, this is natural. It is a natural right. It's very normal because the heat is high in these countries, temperature is high, and it's going to increase electricity demand. And the third new trigger for electricity demand is that electrical vehicles, EVs. Now, let me just deviate from the energy topic and say something else. The world automotive sector has this historic transformation. It's going through an incredible transformation. And many companies in Europe and the US have received negative impacts economically. What are these three things? Let me mention. First and foremost, for years, European countries, European Union countries have become the #1 car producers of the world. Germany, France, Italy, they have become #1, but as of 2024, they lost their position. China has become the world car producer. 5 out of 10 cars produced in the world is produced in China, including internal combustion engine cars and EVs. Well, China has become the leader. And the second thing related to automotive sector is that in the past, where the cars were sold the most was developed countries. And as of last year, this changed. More than 50% of the cars have started to be sold in developing countries, while the new market is not the developed countries or rich countries, but developing countries. And this is the second change. And the third one is the electrical vehicles and the internal combustion engine cars are now changing, like the EVs have taken the bigger share. Let's say 5 years ago, only 5 out of 100 cars sold in the world was just EVs, but right now it is 25, and it's going to grow in the future. And we always think about Europe when it comes to the selling of the cars, but now there are new markets. So what are these new markets? Asian countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and also Latin America, Brazil, and other countries. And for years, for example, in Asia, Japanese and Korean car brands were dominating these areas, but right now their position is at stake. And in Europe, for example, Germany, one of the most important companies of Germany, is now in a big economic crisis because of these changes. Well, what I mean to say is that there's a great transformation happening in the automobile industry, and we could see some surprising changes as well. some leader companies will be in trouble in the future again. Well, if I'm to sum it up again, there's a great demand for electricity, as I mentioned. Three reasons: AI, AC, and the EVs. Okay, the electricity is going to grow in terms of demand, but how are we going to meet this demand? With which technologies? Based on our numbers, in 2025, more than 85% of the newly established energy power plants are renewable energy and sun, solar, wind, and others. And we can also see natural gas, and we can see coal as well. And also, another thing that I want to mention is that, or the fifth, I think, is nuclear power plants. Well, for years I've been interested in nuclear energy, and to defend nuclear has not been easy because a lot of people are against it. And in the past, in Europe, for example, when you visit cities in Europe, you would be criticized. But now, people are not convinced that nuclear energy is going to come back. And 3 years ago, we said that nuclear might have a very serious comeback. We mentioned that, but then wind was not in favor of the nuclear energy. We saw that electricity demand and supply will increase, and in terms of energy security, nuclear energy is very crucial. And we said that in 2025, it was a very risky assumption, but numbers were pointing it out. In 2025, electricity that could be generated from nuclear would be the highest generation from nuclear, and it happened in the same way. Well, we saw the peak energy generation in the last 8 years of nuclear energy generation. But as we have mentioned, not all countries are convinced for this. And just to convince you, in January I'll give you 3 different data. Well, firstly, in the first week of January, Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Takaichi, new lady Prime Minister, I'll be visiting Japan to see her. We're going to have a meeting because after Fukushima, majority of the nuclear power plants in Japan were stopped, and it impacted Japan's economy negatively. In order to replace this, they are buying gas and everything, but they already have nuclear power plants, and it's a huge nuclear power plant. For years I've been telling this to my Japanese friends, 8 gigawatt. Well, it's the world's largest nuclear power plant of the world, and I was invited to visit Japan, to Tokyo, to talk about the reopening of the power plant. Well, the other week, the following week, I'll be in Stockholm, in Sweden, and I'll be having a meeting with the King of Sweden and Prime Minister of Sweden. Currently, their share of nuclear is over 40%, and they want to increase it even higher than this. What reactors should be established? We're going to talk about this with Sweden. And European countries are also trying to increase their share. And the third one, perhaps this is a small step for the world, but it's a big achievement for me. For years, I'm the head of Davos Energy Forum, and for the first time in Davos, there's going to be a special session about nuclear energy. And we've already opened the session, and the there's a great attention and interest in nuclear power plant sessions in Davos. Well, these are real examples. And in nuclear, there's going to be a great competition. And I think our government is very enthusiastic about nuclear energy, and I'm really glad with this. This is really crucial. But which partners you are going to choose, which technology, at what cost? I'm sure that our expert colleagues will do the due diligence, and I think nuclear energy is one of the sine qua nons for Turkey. For meeting energy demand of Turkey and for decreasing environmental emissions, this is very crucial. And also for the Turkey's geopolitical position, nuclear power plants and nuclear energy are very crucial. And let me elaborate on these last two topics. Critical minerals. Well, critical minerals.
Bizim ajansın iyi yanlarından bir tanesi.
One of the good aspects of our agency, by the way, I'll talk about the good parts only. We can easily sense what's going to be good in the future, and we can dive into that topic. Well, 5 years ago, we decided something. We said that let's open up a department for critical minerals. We have a really humble budget, and we want to allocate an important part of this budget to this department to employ data, employees, equipments, and now we can get the return of it. Well, all countries now in the world, not only the ministries of energy, but the Ministry of Interior Affairs or the security departments, they talk to us because this is related to rare minerals, and it's related to the investment of the refining establishments, the sizes, all the operations. We all have this information and we can track everything. Why have we done this? Well, Bora has already explained this very well, but I'd like to underline it again. Critical minerals. Some of us might think that these are clean energy. Okay, this is correct, but it is not limited to this. Critical minerals could be used for drones, well, defense industry drones, and car manufacturing, chips, AI. Well, critical minerals are used in every field now. And well, a country had awakened just way too earlier than us. China. China has done two things about critical minerals. In Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, China went to those places and had some agreements to purchase these minerals. But they established the infrastructure for refining these critical minerals in their countries. Well, critical minerals are like the mines underground, but these mines do not mean anything just by itself. It's like a raw petroleum. You have to, crude oil, you have to refine it and you have to process it. And China has achieved in doing this. As Bora has shown this beforehand, with the numbers, with the figures, you can understand China has a great dominance over these topics. And China is at least 10 years ahead of other countries. Well, even we try to compete with China, China is 10 years ahead from us. And refining such things in China is at the half price of refining or founding these establishments in other countries, because it is not possible to just establish them in the middle of your country. It has these, wastewater treatment facilities, this and that. It's really crucial. In 1970s, we had this petroleum crisis, and in the near future, I cannot say that we are not going to have the critical minerals crisis soon. And I can say that in the very core of the trade of the world, critical minerals will have their important share. In April 2025, China said these earth minerals exportation will be restricted, and people were shocked. And yes, especially car manufacturing sector, the supply chain was disrupted all of a sudden. And I said, everybody in Turkey, there is a saying, a bad consequence can explain the situation very well than 1,000 words. Well, China has proven the importance of the issue. But I'll say two other things just to give you the impression again. Well, China's refining share in the earth minerals is 92%. And Canada, the US, and European countries, Latin America, upon seeing this, just rushed into refining, and they made a lot of investments. And we calculated this. They are just on the board, but I could say that if they are realized as they were calculated on the board without any latency in 2035, now the share of China is 92%, but China's share is going to be 75%, so they are going to be dominant again. Well, I'm not sure whether China is going to do something else. I don't want to make a speculation here. This is not my task. But, well, China has this power, has a strength, and when you negotiate them on the table, I'm sure that they will be much more powerful in their negotiation skills, because they have this upper hand, they have a great strength. For that reason, like we have done in the oil, we should definitely attach importance to critical minerals, and we are preparing important programs for these issues with our member countries. And without further ado, I'll talk about the last part. I think maybe this is the last but the most important thing for us, which is the climate change. As you know, when we say energy, climate change is something which is indispensable of this issue. 85% of this climate change-related gases come from energy. And there is two trends which should not take place now in terms of climate change. As of 2025, we are now having the hottest second year of the world, and the extreme weather conditions of the world, like the wildfires and droughts, and the number and the frequency and the severity of these extreme weather conditions have increased. Well, there's this trend now. Each and every day, people are feeling this. In summer times, there's wildfires, and there's also droughts in other countries. Well, there's an impact on the food and agricultural sector. But the second trend, I can say this very bluntly and openly, climate change is something which is discussed by the world leaders, but now the importance of this issue is decreasing on the eyes of the world leaders. Normally, when such things happen, when the impacts of climate change are felt very much, then as a response to this, well, they should be much more spoken. However, they are not becoming important. I think it's transient. Currently, the world is very much dealing with many
garip ve istisnai
geopolitical
bir dönemden geçiyor.
problems. It's going
Ama
through a very
hala dünyadaki
weird
birçok ülke iklim
times,
değişikliğinin
but
son derece önemli olduğunu.
world should know the climate change is very
Bu
important.
bağlamda
Well, in this
ben
regard,
ülkemizin Avustralya ile birlikte
I'd like to
COP31'e başkanlık
congratulate
etmesini
the
son
presidency
derece
of
isabetli buluyorum.
our countries for COP31st with Australia. It's a really right decision. Maybe you know this with the UAE and Azerbaijan and Brazil. We work with them very closely, and these are great organizations.
Türkiye'nin bu organizasyona ev
Turkey is
sahipliği
going to be
yapmasının,
the host of this
ülkemiz
organization.
açısından
It's
ve
going to be
dünya
really
açısından
crucial for
önemli
our
bir şans.
country, and it's a big chance for the world as well.
Önümüzdeki
And in the
yılda
future,
ülkemizde birçok zirve
we're going to have a
yapılacak.
lot of
Bunlardan bir
summits
tanesi de bu
in
olacak.
our country,
Bu,
and one of the summits is going to be COP31st.
Türkiye'de yapılmasını sağlamak için
Our
hükümetlerimiz,
governments, our
bakanlarımız,
ministries
bakanlıklarımız
have worked a lot
eşgüdümlü bir şekilde, çok güzel bir şekilde
to host this
çalıştılar.
event in
Onları
our
ben
country.
yakinen hem
I
onların
closely
çalışmalarını hem de
followed them.
diğer ülkelerden
I
duyuyorum.
heard
Hepsini tebrik ediyorum.
our
Özellikle
efforts
de
from other countries as well. I'd like to
bakan
congratulate.
yardımcısı Beris
Well, we have Beris Ekinci,
Beris
the
Hanım'a muazzam,
Vice Minister.
olağanüstü,
Well, you exerted great efforts. I know this. Thank you so much, Ms. Beris, for your efforts in this respect. Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Industry, you worked with them a lot. So we'll see what's going to be the outcomes. It's going to be held in Antalya.
Benim naçizane, tabii birçok şey konuşuruz arkadaş. Naçizane umudum,
This is my
şey
hope
birincisi
that
Türkiye'nin iklim değişikliğini dünya gündeminde hak ettiği yere getirebilmesi.
Turkey is going to take climate change topic into a very well-deserved place in the eyes of the world. And in terms of the finance, developed and developing countries can play a role of bridging the other countries. These are my humble recommendations and expectations. Dear friends,
Sözlerimi şöyle bitirmek
let me
istiyorum.
conclude my
Başta
speech
dedim,
in this way.
jeopolitika,
Geopolitics
ülke arası
and
gerilim
tensions among
maalesef
countries have
enerji
unfortunately
sektöründeki birçok
affected
kararı
a lot of
etkiliyor.
decisions in energy
İşte
sector,
maliyet, fiyat,
finance,
sınırı
costs,
birdenbire o ülke
and
bizi
that.
söylüyor, bu
But
ülke
now
bizi
we're
söylüyor.
thinking
Bu da,
about the
o
country's
bakımdan,
statements and discourses as well.
hepimiz çok iyi
We
biliyoruz.
know this
Çok
very well
ciddi,
that Turkey
yenilenebilir
has
kaynakları var.
very significant
Çok iyi haber.
renewable energy sources. We are in the top 5, as Ms. Güler has mentioned, and I hope we will be in the top 3 and will become the leader. Solar, wind, geothermal, well, we have amazing resources, along with nuclear energy in electricity and in other topics. We're going to take very positive steps for the future, and inshallah, next year we'll be together, and let's see whether these have become realized or not. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very
AYKEK
much,
Onursal Başkanı Fatih Bey'e bir kez
Dr.
daha
Fatih
teşekkürlerimizi
Birol,
sunuyoruz.
for
Evet,
your
bugün,
insightful
Sabancı
remarks.
Üniversitesi
Yes, today
Enerji ve İklim Merkezi AYKEK'in
we
15. yılı 2010
are
yılında
celebrating the
ve
15th
bu konferansta
anniversary
AYKEK'in
of
19.
ICAC,
geleneksel
and this is the
yıl sonu
19th
konferansı.
of
Fatih
ICAC's
Birol Bey her sene
conferences.
2-3 AYKEK
Dr. Fatih
organizasyonlarına
Birol
katılıyorlar.
participates
AYKEK
in
Fatih Başkanı
more
olarak,
than
ulusal
one
başkan
ICAC
olarak
organizations as
ve
an honorary
şimdiye
member
kadar
and honorary
2010
president
yılından
of
beri
ICAC,
sağ
and
olsunlar,
since
50'den
2010
fazla AYKEK etkinliğine katıldılar.
he has participated in
vesileyle,
over 50
Sayın
ICAC
Minnettarız,
events,
çok
so
teşekkürlerimizi
we
sunuyoruz
appreciate it, sir.
tekrardan.
Thank you.
Sayın Bakanım, defalarca AYKEK konferanslarını onurlandırdınız.
Mr. Minister, you've also honored us at many ICAC conferences. So we're going to invite you to the stage and then hopefully can keep you a few seconds for a photo shoot. We're going to hear from the minister now.
Çok kıymetli
Distinguished
Sabancı Üniversitesi Mütevelli Eğitim Başkanı
Chairperson
Güler Hanım,
of the founding board of the
Uluslararası Enerji
trustees at
Ajansı'nın
Sabancı
değerli
University,
başkanı
Ms. Güler
Fatih Birol Bey,
Sabancı,
kıymetli rektörüm,
Dr. Fatih
çok
Birol,
kıymetli
esteemed rector,
katılımcılar,
distinguished
kamu ve özel
participants,
sektörün
esteemed
değerli
representatives of the
temsilcileri,
public and private
hanımefendiler,
sectors, ladies and
beyefendiler.
gentlemen,
Ben de
I
sizleri
would
bu
like to
AYKEK,
greet
gelenekselleşen AYKEK toplantılarının birinde daha
and
sizlerle bir arada
appreciate
olmaktan büyük bir memnuniyet duyduğumu ifade
my
ederek
gratitude
sözlerime
for being a
başlamak
part
istiyorum.
of
Hakikaten bu
another
toplantılar ülkemizin
ICAC in a long series of
enerji ve maden
conferences. So this is an
alanında, iklim
important
değişikliği
step
alanında
in energy,
adeta
minerals, and climate
vizyonunu
change. So
oluşturan
these
çok
are very
önemli
important
toplantılar ve
events
her yıl biz
establishing
bunları
the
burada
vision,
tekrar
and we
ediyoruz. Her yıl yeni
reiterate them
gündemlerimiz
every
var,
year.
mevcut
We have
gündemlerimiz var.
always
Ben de
new agenda
bu
or
vesileyle
new hot topics or existing
sizlere
ones that we discuss during these conferences. So I'd like to take this
Enerji ve
opportunity
Tabii Kaynaklar
on
Bakanlığı
behalf of
olarak
the Ministry of Energy and
2026
Natural
ve
Resources,
sonrasındaki
how
planlamalarımızı,
we
enerji
plan
vizyonunda
ahead,
Türkiye'nin yeni enerji
how we
mimarisinde
plan ahead
planladığımız
for
projeleri
establishing a new energy
kısaca
infrastructure for
bahsetmek
Turkey.
istiyorum. Bunun önemli
So I
bir
believe this is an
vesile olduğunu
important
düşünüyorum bu
platform for
platformun.
me to share
Şimdi
this information with you. I'll
Ben
start with
elektrikle başlamak
electricity
istiyorum.
because,
Fatih Bey de
as Dr.
konuşmasında
Fatih
ifade
Birol
ettiler.
alluded to
Hakikaten
in his
dünyada
talk,
elektrikleşen
we
bir
are
dünyaya
becoming
gidiyoruz.
more and
Dünya
more
ekonomilerinin
electrified
elektrikleştiği bir
in the
çağa
world. The
doğru
world
gidiyoruz.
economies are being electrified,
Ve
and
yine ifade ettiler. Özellikle
the
yapay
AI,
zeka,
data
data
centers,
merkezleri,
as
bunun
well
yanı sıra
as climatization,
elektrikli
electric
araçlar.
vehicles. And
Ben
I'd
buna
like
bir
to add
şey daha
something
ilave
else to
etmek
that.
istiyorum. Belki bu
Maybe
konuda bir çalışması
the
vardır
ICAC
Uluslararası
has,
Enerji
the International
Ajansı'nın.
Energy Agency
Ama
has
küresel
a study on it,
ısınma
but
kaynaklı,
there's also the
özellikle suda yaşayacağımız
water shortage
sıkıntılar, dünya geneli için
linked
söylüyorum.
with
Belki
global
bizi,
warming
deniz
may
suyunu
lead us
arıtma ve bunun için
to
gerekli
purification
enerji elektrik talebinin
or
artacağı
treatment
bir
of
dünyaya doğru
seawater,
açıkçası bizi ittiğini
which
düşünüyorum.
will require energy.
Dolayısıyla
So
bütün bunları
when
bir
we
araya
bring all of them
getirdiğimizde
together,
artan bir
we are
elektrik
faced
talebi
with an
var.
increased demand of
Küresel
electricity.
trendler
That being the
böyleyken
case globally,
Türkiye'ye
in
baktığımızda
Turkey you
aslında
also see
benzer
similar
şeyleri
struggles.
yaşadığımızı görüyoruz.
Turkey's energy
talebi,
demand,
elektrik
electricity
talebi,
demand,
geçtiğimiz 20 yılda
as
olduğu
has
gibi
been in the
önümüzdeki
last
30
20
yıllık
years,
projeksiyona baktığımızda
it
yine
appears
benzer trendde artacağını
to have an
görüyoruz.
increasing trend
Ne
for the
görüyoruz?
next 30.
2055'e
So by
geldiğimizde şu anda 350
2055,
terawatt saat olan elektrik talebimizin
we
1050 terawatt
expect our
saatleri, yani
electricity
bir 3 katına
demand to
çıkacağını
triple,
düşünüyoruz.
reaching
Fakat emin olun,
1,050
bu tahmin
terawatt hours.
biraz
But this is
muhafazakar
rather
bir tahmin. Yani o
conservative
biraz önce saydığımız
of a
o
prediction.
etkenlerin daha yoğun bir şekilde bu
we-
modelin içerisine girdiği
in a case where
durumda
this
bu talep belki
demand
3 katından da
will
daha büyük
be
bir talep
increased
olacak.
as
Dolayısıyla bizim
in addition to
çok
the factors
ciddi
that I
artan bir
mentioned, I
elektrik
think it's going to
talebimiz var
increase
ve
critically
biz politikalarımızı bu yeni
the end
Türkiye'nin
result.
yeni
So the
enerji
policies
mimarisini
and
bu
Turkey's
artan
new
talebi
energy
karşılayacak
infrastructure and
yatırımları
architecture
ve hem
is being
altyapı
planned
anlamında hem üretim anlamında
to
yapma
meet these
konusunda bazı
demands, and
planlamalara bizi
I
açıkçası
think it's
zorluyor.
pushing our hand
Dolayısıyla
actually to do so.
böyle bir dünyada
So this is the
hareket
world
ediyoruz.
we operate
Tabii
in.
bu
And
beraberinde bu kaynakları Türkiye'nin bir taraftan da dışa bağımlılığını düşürmekle
we
alakalı çok
also
ciddi
have
bir
a very
hedef ortaya
significant
koyduğumuz
goal
için
of
bu
lowering our
kaynakları mümkün olduğu
dependence
kadar kendi
on
kaynaklarımızla
external sources. So we want to achieve this as much as possible utilizing domestic resources.
Ev sahipliği,
So
başkanlığı,
2026
dolayısıyla
will mark
iklimle alakalı
our
Türkiye'nin de ortaya bir
hosting
iddia ve
of
bir
COP31,
hedef koyması lazım.
and we need
Bütün
to
bunları bir
have
araya
certain
getirdiğimizde
goals
yerli
in place.
kaynaklar,
So
yenilenebilir
domestic
kaynaklar özellikle bu
resources,
anlamda
renewable
öne
resources
çıkacak.
mainly,
Bizim
will be at the
2024 yılında
forefront.
ortaya koyduğumuz
As you
malumunuz
know,
gibi 2035
have
yenilenebilir
published
enerji
our
hedefi var.
renewable energy
Cumhurbaşkanımız bunu
objectives
COP
for
29'da
2035,
Bakü'de bütün
which
dünyaya
was
ilan
announced
etti.
by our
Ve
president
dedik
at
ki biz Türkiye
COP29
olarak
in Baku to
2035
the entire
yılında
world.
o gün
So we
itibariyle
said
30.000 megawattlarda
our
olan
installed
kurulu
capacity of
gücümüzü
30,000
4 katına
megawatt back then
çıkaracağız ve
will be
120.000 megawatt'a
quadrupled,
gideceğiz.
reaching
Bu
120,000 by
açıkçası bizim her
2035,
yıl
which
8 ila
requires us
9.000
to
megawattlık
establish
yeni
a
güneş ve
new
rüzgar yapmamız
wind
anlamına
or
geliyor.
solar plants
Ve
with a capacity of
şunu
8
büyük
to 9
bir mutlulukla ifade ediyorum, memnuniyetle ifade
megawatts.
ediyorum. Türkiye
So,
2025 yılı
Turkey,
itibariyle,
I'm
yani
very
o
happy to
koyduğumuz
say
hedef
that
itibariyle
in
2025 yılında
2025
bu büyüme patikasına girmiş.
is on the right track for
Çünkü
this
biz bu
growth
seneyi
because
yaklaşık 6.000 megawatt güneşle
we
ve
have
2.000 megawattı bulan rüzgarla
installed
toplam
a
8.000
total
megawattın
we're
üzerinde
closing the year
bitireceğiz
with over
2025'te. Bu çok
8,000
önemli bir
megawatts
gelişme.
of
Bu
new
patikaya
installed
bizim girmemiz,
capacity
yani o
of solar and
120.000
wind.
megawattlık
So
hedefe gidiyor olmamız
it's
çok
very valuable that
kıymetli.
we're on the right track to achieve 120,000 megawatts of installed capacity, because we were asking whether this was realistic. We need the financing, the investments, we know the challenges, so it's quite important that we, as I said, are on the right track. But maybe we need to increase the annual number a little bit, so maybe reach 10,000 or 12,000 megawatts per year, which will be worthy of our position as a host for COP31, and also will help us meet our own energy needs in renewables and domestic resources. So hopefully 2026 will be a year where we break the records in renewables, and hopefully altogether we will, we're expecting intense investment in this area from the private sector. For 2026 onwards, one of the most crucial elements of this new outlook will be infrastructure investments, because such a tremendous energy demand can only be met with a very robust infrastructure if we want to be sustainable. I'll talk about two things. One of them is the distribution network, the sector, and the second one is the transmission grid. Both of these require significant investment. For distribution, as you would imagine, 2026 to 2030 will be the period for tariffs. We're working on it. The final numbers will be published, but we're talking about 1 trillion Turkish liras of an investment for distribution, transmission, maintenance. But for transmission, we need a more groundbreaking, we have a more disruptive projection. So if we want to achieve this 120,000 megawatts integrated into the system by 2035, we should most certainly be able to transmit electricity from south to north, east to west. So we need a very strong HVDC lines, a very strong transmission grid. So we need to bring Turkey to transmission 2.0, and this is the investment period we're starting. And in the next decade, Turkey will spend in this field alone by $30 billion, and we're Turkish liras. We're discussing this with international agencies. The World Bank is quite interested in this, and through foreign financing, using different models, economic models, inshallah, with TEİAŞ, we'll be able to establish this infrastructure in the most robust way, because at the end of the day, it all boils down to how strong your electric transmission lines are. This will be important for the industrialists, for everyone, for 86 million citizens living in the country. And this is a prerequisite if we want to bring them the electricity smoothly. So in the next decade, we're going to see a lot of strong investments in energy infrastructure. So we're talking about a lot of renewable resources, but there's also a need of Turkey, some flexible resources, be it natural gas plants, and if possible, I know financing is limited, but we're almost on the home run. Turkey needs thermal plants and new capacities in coal as well. So that is the planning for 2026. God willing, in the first quarter of the next year, we will commission an 840 megawatt natural gas plant in Kırklareli. Congratulations to our investors, because Turkey needs such resources. Yes, nuclear is on the way in Akkuyu, but if you look at the electricity demand of Turkey, these base load plants, we need flexible natural gas plants specifically. So what Dr. Birol highlighted is very important. If you want to build a natural gas plant today, you can only start in 2030, 2031 if you want to commission it, because so that limitations in terms of supply really tie our hands if we want to move faster. 2026 will be a year where we will focus on storage, because there are some capacities allocated, and these capacities, step by step, will be again commissioned by 2026. So we're talking about a new capacity of 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts, and the remaining will be done incrementally. But
şebeke
TEİAŞ,
TEİAŞ'ın
under the TEİAŞ control, the grid operator of Turkey,
depolama ihtiyacı
we need
depolama master
storage
belki
master
bir,
plan, or
planlama
maybe we need a plan
Türkiye'nin
to
önümüzdeki 10 yılını 15 yılını bu
frame
anlamda,
Turkey's
bir planlamanın içerisinde ve bunun
situation in this
projelendirildiği bir yıl
field
olacak
for the
inşallah
next 15, 20
2026
years. And hopefully,
Bizim
2026 will be
çok
the year
üzerinde
that
durduğumuz
we
konulardan bir tanesi
actually make this
komşularımızla
plan.
interkoneksiyon
And we also would like to
kapasitemizi
increase
arttırmak.
the interconnection
Avrupa'yla
capacity
olan
with our
bağlantımızı ve
neighbors,
diğer
be it the
komşularımızla
European
olan
Union or
bağlantımızı
other
arttırarak
neighbors.
aynı zamanda
And we
şebekemizi
want
biraz
to
büyütmek, bu
expand our
anlamdaki
grid,
ticaret kapasitesini
improve trading
arttırmamız
capacity
gerekiyor.
in this regard, because last year
Türkiye
Turkey
yaklaşık 1 milyar kilowatt saatlik bir elektrik
exported
ihracatını
1 billion
Avrupa'ya
kilowatt
yaptı.
hours of
Oradan
electricity to
yaklaşık,
Europe,
fiyatların daha uygun olduğu bir
and
dönemde 700 milyon kilowatt saatlik bir
we
elektrik
purchased
aldı.
700
Bu
million
ticareti arttırmak ve aynı
euros
zamanda
of
sistemimizi daha güçlü
electricity,
hale
but
teknik
we want
açıdan
to
getirebilmek için
grasp these
interconnection
opportunities
kapasitemizi
strongly
arttırmak.
and increase our
elektrik
capacity.
ihracatımızı
So we need to do
arttırmak,
this. For example,
Irak'a
we want to
elektrik
improve our
ihracatımızı
export to
arttırmak gibi
Syria, to
planlamaların
Iraq.
içerisindeyiz.
Ho-
Elbette
Obviously,
Azerbaycan'la, Bulgaristan'la, Gürcistan'la birlikte ortaya koyduğumuz
we have the
yeşil,
green energy corridor through
kapsamında
Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, and
Nahçıvan'dan
Georgia.
Türkiye'ye gelebilecek
So the electricity
elektrik
coming through Nahçıvan will
Bulgaristan'a ve
be
Avrupa'ya aktarmayla
transmitting
alakalı
Turkey
projeleri de bu sene
and
içerisinde
moving
inşallah
towards
en azından temeli
Europe.
atıp hayata geçirme
And hopefully
noktasında
these
ilerlemek
projects
istiyoruz.
will be started.
Son olarak
this
elektrik
year.
tarafıyla ilgili şunu söyleyeyim.
One last word
Bu da
about
özellikle
electricity, which
sektörümüzün
is an
beklentisi,
expectation from the
bana
sector, and
çokça
which is a
sorulan
frequently asked
sorulardan bir
question
tanesi. Bu toplantı
to me.
vesilesiyle de
So I'll
açıklamış
take this
oldum.
opportunity to
Özellikle
explain.
sanayicilerimizin,
Our
turizm
industrialists, as well
sektöründeki,
as hotels in the
otellerin,
tourism industry,
üniversitelerin,
universities,
belediyelerin
municipalities, they
beklediği,
expect
kendi öz tüketimleri amacıyla yapacakları özellikle
investment,
başta güneş
for
yatırımları,
example,
çatı
solar
uygulamalarıyla
panels
alakalı
for their own
2026 yılı
consumption.
itibariyle önümüzdeki
So
birkaç
in a
gün
couple of days, as
sonra
of 2026,
inşallah,
hopefully,
yeni
we will be
kapasiteleri
announcing
ve
new
bunları nasıl
capacities
tahsis
and how these
edeceğimizi, burada
capacities will be
önceliklerimizi nereye
allocated
vereceğimizle
and what
alakalı
will be
bir yol
prioritized.
haritası
So
ve kapasite ilanını
this
da
will be
2026 yılı
in
itibariyle
action
yapmak
in
istiyoruz. Bunu
2026. This is an
önemsiyoruz.
important
Bu
topic
özellikle,
for us,
üretilen
especially
elektriğin tüketildiği noktada kullanılması.
since we prioritize the consumption of electricity at the point of generation. So we are taking into consideration the demands from the industries. If you allow me, I'll talk about oil and gas. In 2016, with the national energy and mining policy, Turkey put forward a new strategy, and we're celebrating the 10th year of the strategy, and we want to write a new success story. As you know, Gabar, we've reached a plateau. We have a production of 80,000 barrels. About 3,500 employees are working there, which is quite significant for the region itself. Terror-free Turkey is now possible, appears to be possible, because the Gabar is an important sign. Once terrorism is eliminated, it will bring out the potential, it will help with the employment of the youth and contribute to the economy. In the Sakarya region, we have new news. In 2026, the gas transmitted to 4 million households, we are going to double it in 2026. So 8 million houses will receive natural gas from Sakarya. FPU preparations are about to be finalized. Hopefully, the production will be doubled, because this is one of the greatest contributors to our current deficit, because we're quite dependent on other countries. Increasing natural gas production is of vital importance for Turkey. 2028 will be an important milestone for Turkey, because we will quadruple our production. Turkey will produce 40 to 45 million cubic meters of natural gas in Sakarya. So it will be a production of 270,000 barrels. And we also have Gabar and other assets. So in 2028, barring anything new, we will be producing 500,000 barrel equivalents of oil and natural gas.
doğalgaz
Dear
ve
friends,
petrol talebi 2
Turkey's
milyon.
demand is 2 million barrels per day, so this is going to close an important gap, but we need to have a new success story. So 2026 to us is both an important ending and beginning, because Turkey,
Çok önemli bir diplomasi hatayla, çok
with
önemli bir
significant diplomatic
dışı,
maneuvers
uluslararası
and
ilişkiler,
robust
Cumhurbaşkanımızın
international
liderliğini
relations
şunu
under the
yaptı.
leadership of our
Geçtiğimiz birkaç
president,
içerisinde
achieved
Libya'da,
the following. In Libya, in Africa, in Iraq,
Irak'ta,
in
Orta
Middle
Doğu'da,
East, hopefully
inşallah
in
Suriye'de,
Syria, in
Orta
Central
Asya'da,
Asia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Turkey
Türkiye'nin şu anda üzerinde
is
çalıştığı
working on
projelerle
various
biz
projects in these countries. So
Türkiye
Turkey
artık birleşme ve
petrolleri
devalvalarla, M&A'lerle artık 1
now
milyon varil
will have the
petrol ve
capacity
doğalgaz
to
üreten bir
produce
şirket
1
haline
million
getirmeyi hedefliyoruz.
barrels
Yani
of
yeni
oil
büyüme
and natural
hikayemiz
gas,
inşallah
hopefully
bu
with
çerçevede
new
olacak.
M&As
Bu
and new
anlamda,
partnerships. That is the goal.
finansal
So
kabiliyeti özellikle dış finansmanı Türkiye'ye çekecek
we
farklı
are
enstrümanları
evaluating
devreye
different
almayı
financial
hedefliyoruz.
instruments to
Ama
bring
yurt dışında
FDIs,
çok daha aktif
but
bir
we want to
milli
be
petrol
a more,
şirketini
we want to have a
hedefliyoruz.
more active
Uluslararası
national oil
ortaklıklarla,
company abroad
uluslararası,
with international
büyük petrol
partnerships, with
şirketleriyle yapacağımız
partnerships with
ortaklıklarla,
international oil companies,
mevcut aldığımız
and
sahalarda ve ruhsatlarda.
for example, in
Örneğin
Somalia,
Somali'de
hopefully
inşallah
in
2026
2026 we will
ilk sondajımızı
hit the
yapacağız.
ground
Oldukça
running with the
iddialı bir
first drilling
çalışmanın
activity.
içerisindeyiz.
In
Pakistan'da
Pakistan,
çok kısa bir süre önce
very
3
recently
tane offshore
we have
sahası, 2 tane
established
onshore sahasında
partnerships
ortaklık
in
yaptık.
3
Orada
offshore,
da
2
2026
onshore
yılında
sites,
inşallah
and
sondaja
hopefully we will
başlıyoruz.
start drilling in
Dolayısıyla
2026.
böyle bir
So
yeni
this
bir petrol ve
is
doğalgaz
the new
hikayesi
story
oluşturmaya
that
gayret
is
ediyoruz. Ama
being
bu konuda
written
şunu da
in
ifade
oil and
edeyim. Bir
gas.
başka husus,
Another
bizim
topic
Diyarbakır'da
is the
başladığımız
unconventional
unkonvansiyonel
exploration
arama
activities in Diyarbakır.
Burada da dünyanın bu konudaki en iyi
We're working with one of the
şirketlerinden bir
best
tanesi ki
in
Fatih
the
Yolda
globe.
ifade ettiler. Yani
As Dr.
Amerika'da
Birol
bu
said,
doğalgazın bollaşması
America's
aslında bu
increase in
unkonvansiyonel
natural
üretimin
gas
çatlatma
is
teknolojisinin
this.
getirdiği bir hikayenin sonucu. Dolayısıyla bunu biz Diyarbakır'da 4 sahadaki yapacağımız ortaklıkla
So this will be
24
a
yıllık bir
program
program,
of
önümüzdeki 2-3 yıl
24
içerisinde
wells,
hayata
and it will
geçiriyoruz.
be
2026
implemented in the next 3
ilk
years.
yatay sondaj ve
Fracking.
çatlatmanın
It will be
yapılacağı
the
yıl olacak.
first
Burada
year
elde
that we will
edilecek
start
bu başarı
fracking,
bizim petrol sektörümüzde, doğalgaz sektörümüzde
and it's going to be
onun
game
değiştirici bir
changer
etkisi
for
olabilecek
both the
büyük
oil and
bir
gas
konu.
industry in Turkey.
Dolayısıyla büyük bir
So,
potansiyelin olduğu bir
Diyarbakır
bölge.
has
Diyarbakır,
great
petrol
potential in
açısından,
terms
kaya
of
petrol açısından. Bunu
fracking.
2026 yılında
We
Trakya'ya
will carry
taşımayı
this to the Thrace
yani
region.
Trakya'da da kaya gazı amaçlı bu fracking'i
This
inşallah
fracking,
unkonvansiyonel
hopefully this
üretimi
unconventional
hayata geçirmek istiyoruz.
production will start
Doğalgaz alanında
in the
tedarik
coming
tarafında
years.
özellikle yaptığımız çok
There
önemli
have
altyapı
always
yatırımları
there have
oldu.
been very significant
Biz
infrastructure investments
Kuzey
in this
Amerika'daki
area.
bu
The LNG
ihracatı
growth,
alanındaki
export
büyümeyi
growth
aslında
in North
2016
America,
yılında
we foresaw it in
Uluslararası
2016.
Enerji Ajansı
And this
raporlarında
was
çok uzun
greatly addressed in
ifade
detail
etmişlerdi. Daha
in the
öncesinde
reports of
doğalgazın
International
altın
Energy
çağı
Agency. I
raporlarını
remembered
hatırlıyorum ben.
further reports
Ve onu
from way back
gördüğümüz
when.
Türkiye'de
So
büyük bir altyapı
we
yatırımına
started a significant
2016 yılında
infrastructure
Türkiye'de
investment.
30 milyon metreküp olan
Back then, our
taşıma
liquefaction,
kapasitesi
gasification was 30
milyon
million
metreküp.
cubic meters in capacity, but today it's
Ve biz bunu
161 million cubic
önümüzdeki
meters,
birkaç
and
yıl
we want
içerisinde
to
200 milyon
bring it up to
metreküp
200 million in the coming years, because we
LNG'nin
believe
çok
LNG
önemli
is a
bir
very
alternatif,
important alternative gas
gaz
resource,
kaynağı olduğuna inanıyoruz.
and
Bize çok
it
önemli
provides great
gelmesine
flexibility.
inanıyoruz. Ve son bir yılda yaptığımız uzun
And
dönemli
with
LNG
the, if you look at the long-term
bakarsanız,
LNG agreements
buradaki
we've
trendin
undersigned in
benzer
the past
şekilde
year,
önümüzdeki
this
süreçte
trend
devam
will
edeceğini
continue
ve
in the coming
Türkiye'nin
years, and
doğalgaz tedarik portföyünün
Turkey's
artık yeni bir
portfolio
şeyle, yeni bir
will
resme
have
kavuşacağını
a new
söyleyebilirim
outlook
şimdiden.
in
Yaptığımız
natural gas.
kontratların
So almost half of
neredeyse
the
yarısı
contracts we made
çok daha büyük
have greater
esnekliklere sahip.
flexibility,
Yani
so they're
FOB
FOB based. So
Dolayısıyla
once
biz
we
o kargoyu
receive this
aldığımızda
shipment,
Avrupa'da başka bir
we will be able to
lokasyona
swap
veya
it
yoluyla farklı bir
or
şirkete
send it to
onu farklı
another
bir
destination
destinasyona
in
yönlendirme
Europe.
şansına sahibiz. Yani
Therefore,
biz Türkiye özellikle BOTAŞ'ı bu anlamda bir ticaret merkezi
we
ve ticaret şirketi
are
haline
willing to
getirmeyi hedefliyoruz.
bring Botaş
Depo
into
yatırımlarını
a trading
hızlandıracağımız
company.
bir,
We're
özellikle
going to
toz
increase
bölümündeki
our
kapasitelerin
storage
artacağı bir yıl
capacities
olacak. benzer şeyi
We
Silivri'de
have
planlıyoruz.
plans to do this in
Yeni
various
ihracat
locations.
noktaları ve özellikle Avrupa'ya
Also,
Türkiye'nin gaz ihracatının artacağı bir döneme
we are
doğru
going towards a
gidiyoruz.
trend where
Burada
Turkey's
çok kısa
export of gas to
belirtmekte fayda
Europe
olur.
will increase. I'd like to briefly
2026
mention
bu anlamda
2026, where
önemli.
we will have a new
anlaşması,
ITP agreement.
yani yeni
Iraq-Turkey
boru hattı
pipeline
anlaşmasının
agreement will be
yapılacağı yıl
renewed
Temmuz'da
in
malum
2026 in
Ve
July.
orada
And our
prensip duruşumuz şudur, onu
principle
ifade etmem lazım.
and our position is the following. In the past 50 years,
kendi
Türkiye,
toprağındaki 650 kilometrelik
from Silopi to
Silopi'den Ceyhan'a
Ceyhan,
kadar günde 1,4-1,5 milyon varil taşıma kapasitesi.
this line of 1.4-1.5 million barrels, we've been keeping it operational for the past 50 years. But unfortunately, this pipeline has been used underutilized. So with this new ITP, our principle is that we are looking for ways to use this pipeline at full capacity. That is our objective for the renewal of this contract. 2026, as I've said, is an important year for us. Hopefully, we will generate the first electricity at Akkuyu nuclear plant. As Turkey, our target is clear. By 2050, we need to have 20,000 megawatts of nuclear power. I know, Ms. Sabancı, we disagree on this, but if Turkey wants to achieve net zero, as Dr. Birol mentioned, if we want to have a net zero economy, we cannot do this. That is the same for the world. So all the developed countries at COP28 said that they need to triple nuclear capacity. Yes, the challenges also should be outlined by International Energy Agency. So the technological challenges, when you look at the conventional plants, you see Russia, you see China, and if you turn here, you see Korea. But those things require, maybe we need to focus on the fuel aspect of it, so there's a concentration there as well. But one of the rooms for opportunity would be the small modular reactors. There's ways to go, but I believe that Turkey has strong industrialism and entrepreneurship. So this will be the renaissance of nuclear, and I think it's going to be a window of opportunity for the country. I know this will take time, but I believe with SMRs, our industrialists will find it easier to transition into cleaner energy. So Sinop and Thrace region projects are under negotiations, and hopefully we will see new developments in 2026. And today's topic, mines and minerals. Unfortunately, we are net importers in this area as Turkey, and I mean, occupational health and safety is number one. So people first, environment first. We're not talking about mining despite the environment, but for the environment, where rehabilitation activities are fulfilled. And also, we want to have mining with added value. So it's not a raw material, but also remaining as a raw material, but also an end product or an interim product. So for that, with the new amendment to the law in July, we've taken an important step and tried to do the following. Number one was to have a more predictable permits mechanism and simplify the process. And hopefully, we will start seeing the impact of it starting 2026, both for renewable energies and mining industry. However, I mean, we can only achieve these targets if we can do that. Number two, there has been significant regulations on rehabilitation, so that the mining sites will not be left to their own
kritik ve stratejik madenlere
devices, but we need
çerçeve
to have
kazandırmamız da
a
aslında
legal
geleceğe ve
infrastructure
madenlere bakış açımızı yansıtması açısından
regulating
önemli.
that.
Şimdi
Rare
nadir
earth
toprak
elements,
elementleri çok uzun uzun
this was
anlatıldı,
discussed in
tekrara
great details. I'm
girmeyeceğim
not going to
ama
repeat,
bizim
but
ne
I'll just
yaptığımızı
talk about
ifade
what our
etmek
ministry
istiyorum.
does.
Eskişehir Beylikova'da bulduğumuz
The reserve we found
rezerv
in Beylikova, Eskişehir,
bizim aslında bugün daha çok dünya
I
bunu
mean, yes,
konuşmaya başladı ama
the world is
yani
discussing
çok
this, but
uzun bir aslında arka plan
this
çalışması
is a
var.
lengthy
Biz bu
work
sahada
in the background.
yaklaşık 125 bin metre
We
sondaj
have
yaptık.
drilled about
Bir yılda falan
125,000
yapmadık.
meters. This didn't happen in a
Neredeyse
year.
8-10 yıllık
This
bir
has been
mazisi.
going on for a decade.
Ve yaklaşık
And
10 binlerce 59 bin
59,000
test
tests
yaptık
were
bu sahada.
conducted.
Şimdi bize diyorlar ki işte
People are saying that
nadir
rare
toprak
earth elements, I mean,
elementleri
they
sanki
believe,
bugün bulunmuş gibi. Hayır,
people
maalesef
think
böyle uzun bir
the rare
çalışma
earth
süreci var.
elements were
Ve
found just
2021
yesterday, but
yılında bir
no,
pilot
it's been a
tesisi
long time we've been working on
yapmaya
it.
başladık.
We've established a
2023 yılında
pilot
bir pilot tesisi
facility
kurduk. Yani
in
1200 tonluk
2023,
bir şu anda
so
üretim
we
tesisi
have
var
a
Eskişehir'de.
production capacity of 1,200
Şimdiki
tons,
hedefimiz
and as of
2026'dan itibaren
2026, our
başlayacağımız hedef şu.
objective
Biz
is the
bu işin
following.
rafinaj kısmında
We want to
endüstriyel
achieve
ölçeğe
industrial
ve
scale
yaklaşık
in
yıllık
refining
570 bin
capacity
tonluk bir
and
kapasiteye
a
çıkmayı
total
hedefliyoruz.
capacity of
Ama eksik
570,000
olduğumuz husus
tons
var.
per
İşte
year.
Çin'in herkesle arasını
But
fersah
something's
fersah
missing, which is the
teknoloji,
purification
saflaştırma,
technology, which is
%99,
becoming
%99'lara gidebilme ve daha
99.9
katma değerli hale bu
purity
nadir
and
toprak
making these rare earth
elementleri
minerals
getirme meselesi. Burada da
of
birçok
greater
ülkeyle
added value.
görüşüyoruz.
And
Yani
we're
bu
discussing this
teknolojiyi
with
alıp Türkiye'ye
many
getirebilmek
countries to
alakalı.
bring this
İnşallah
technology and
bu konuda,
transfer it to Turkey. And
önemli, burada da ifade edildi. Uluslararası
international
işbirlikleri.
collaborations will be
Aslında,
important in this
bundan birkaç yıl
field.
önce başlayan
A couple of
bir
years ago,
mineral security
there was the
partnership
mineral
vardı.
security
Yani
partnership
dünya,
that was
zaten
established.
bu
So
konuda
the
bir
world is
kolektif hareketin
already
içerisinde
supposed to be in a
olması lazım. Yani bu
collective
kadar büyük bir
because
baskın bir tedarik tarafına baktığınızda bunun
there has to be a strong alliance against
kolektif bir
this
uluslararası
dominance,
işbirliğine
actually.
ihtiyaç olduğunu
And
ve
Turkey
Türkiye'nin bu anlamda buna
is open to
açık
such an
olduğunu bu
alliance.
vesileyle ifade etmek istiyorum. Ama bunun dışında
But when it comes to
bakırda,
nickel,
nikeldi,
lithium,
lityumdu,
copper,
biz enerji
if
dönüşümünü
we
eğer
can,
başarılı kılabilmek
if we want to
için
achieve
bulmamız
energy transition in a
gerekiyorsa,
successful way, we should most
dönüşüm için
certainly
gerekli ham maddelerin de dönüşümün
keep
hızına
the
uygun bir
pace
şekilde
with the
piyasaya
supply of
sunulması
these
da,
materials
çok
that are
önem arz ediyor. Elbette ki
essential for this
aslında
transition.
bizim için ve bence dünya için şu anda kritik hale gelen
Gold
altın
production,
üretimi.
which is a
Türkiye'nin
critical
bu konuda
topic
ciddi
for
bir
globe as
potansiyeli
well.
var.
Turkey has
Altın
great
üretimimizde
potential
Türkiye'ye
in
yakışan
gold
en az
production,
100
and we
tona
need to
çıkarmamız
reach
lazım.
at least
Evet, onu
100
söyleyeyim.
tons.
Bu konuda da
And our
mevcut
current
tesislerimiz, yeni
facilities,
yapılacak hem yerli
new
yabancı
ones to be built,
yatırımcılarımızla,
I hopefully
Türkiye'nin altın
we
üretimini de
want to
arttırmayı
increase the gold
hedefliyoruz.
production in Turkey.
Son
Yeah, I
olarak
know I
biraz
took
uzattım
too
ama
long,
sözlerimi
but as
şöyle
I
tamamlamak
conclude my
istiyorum.
remarks, I'd like to say the following.
Bütün bunlarla beraber
Given all of these,
Türkiye'nin özellikle enerjideki kamu iktisadi
Turkey's,
teşekküllerini, TİH,
public,
Türkiye'nin EÜH,
private partnerships, TİH, EÜH, Etimaden, and BOTAŞ,
yeniden yapılandırma
we have a target to restructure.
bu kadar gelişen ve yenilenen bir dünyada artık
So
kurumlarımızın da bu
our
anlamda
institutions
kendilerini
need
yenilenmesi,
to
bunlara
renew
ayak bağlanan
themselves.
bazı
They need
şeylerden
to
kendilerini kurtarması çok önem arz
streamline
ediyor.
their
İnşallah bununla
processes, and
alakalı
hopefully the
gelişmeleri de,
developments will be shared with you in due
zamanla
time.
sizlerle paylaşırız. Ve burada bir şey
And
daha
one more
vurgu
thing
yaparak
to
sözlerimi
highlight
bitirmek
before I
istiyorum.
conclude.
2026 bizim
2026,
Türkiye enerji sektörüne belki
maybe
kitlerimiz üzerinden
through
veya
public
farklı
economic
şekillerde ama yoğun bir dış finansmanın geleceği, hem
enterprises,
uluslararası finansal
but
kuruluşlardan,
also
hem
through
farklı,
financing
ticari
from abroad,
kuruluşlardan önemli bir dış
be it
finansmanın
financial
geleceğinin yılı olacağını,
institutions
farklı
or other
finansal
investors. It will be a
enstrümanları
year
hayata
where we will
geçireceğimiz,
integrate
ECA'leri,
different
sukuk
instruments,
ihracını,
sukuk,
belki
ECAs, maybe
IPO'lar
IPOs.
düşüneceğimiz
So
bir yıl
2026 will be
olacağını
a
ifade ederek
significant
beni
year
tekrar
for us. Thank you
sabırla
very much
dinlediğiniz
for
için
your
çok teşekkür
patience
ediyorum.
and attention, and I
AKİK
hope this
toplantısının
ICAC meeting will be
verimli
fruitful for
olmasını diliyorum ve
everyone.
hepinize iyi
And
bir
Happy New Year in
2026 diliyorum.
advance
Milletimize, hepinize, ailelerimize
for you, for your
sağlıklı
family,
bir
and
yıl
for our
diliyorum.
country.
Sağ olun.
Thank you.
Panel moderatörümüz Sayın Elçin İbadov, Sokar Türkiye CEO'su, Sayın Beriz Ekinci, Dışişleri Bakanlığı Bakan Yardımcısı, Sayın Büyükelçimiz, Mehmet Yılmaz, Türkiye Madenciler Derneği Başkanı ve Sayın Yasemin Hoşter Öztekin, Hitachi Enerji Türkiye Genel Müdürü.
Enerji sektörünün değerli liderleri bugün çok önemli bir konuda, kritik mineraller konusunda bir söyleşi gerçekleştireceğiz. Açıkçası ben ilk kez bir panelde moderatörlük yapıyorum. O yüzden bunun heyecanını da yaşıyorum. Ama bu heyecanımı biraz da mazur görün. Çünkü böyle bir değerli panelist grubuyla bir söyleşi yapmak tabii ki doğal olarak beni heyecanlandırmalı. Konuya baktığımızda da ben yıllar önce bir yönetim felsefesi okumuştum. Organizational Ambidexterity diye bir felsefe. Kurumsal çift yönlülük. Burada yani kurumsal şirketlerin yönetişimiyle ilgili bir felsefeydi ama bence hayatımızda, günlük iş hayatımızda her şeyi uygulayabileceğimiz bir felsefe. Felsefenin temelinde de şu vardı: enerjini, zamanını, kaynaklarını, bir kısmını bugünün konularına harcarken bir kısmını da geleceğin konularına, yarının konularına, yarın bizi neler bekliyor, hangi riskler bekliyor, bu risklerle ilgili hangi hazırlıklar yapmalıyım, bunlara harcamayı tavsiye eden, telkin eden bir felsefeydi. Bugünkü panelimiz de tam olarak bu. Yani bugün konuşacağımız konularda biraz bugünün konularına değineceğiz. Biraz da doğal olarak yarınla ilgili neler hedefliyoruz. Bu sektörde bizi yarın neler bekliyor, onlara yöneleceğiz. Dilerseniz böyle ısınma turuyla başlayalım. Çünkü birazdan gerçekten çok nitelikli konulara girmek durumunda kalacağız. Şimdi hepinize değerli panelistçiler ortak bir soruyla yönelmek istiyorum. Uluslararası Enerji Ajansı'nın son raporlarında enerji güvenliğinin artık sadece arz güvenliği ile sınırlı kalmadığını okuyoruz, görüyoruz. Burada tedarik zincirleri, kritik mineraller, elektrik sistemlerinin dayanıklılığı ve hatta jeopolitik riskler de enerji güvenliği açısından önem arz ediyor. Eskiden enerji güvenliği dendiğinde biz işte doğal gaz geldi mi gelmedi mi diye soru oralarda kısıtlı kalırdı. Ama şimdi liste biraz uzadı. İşte bunun için gerekli mineral var mı? Şebeke dayanıklı mı? Tedarik zinciri sağlam mı? Amiyane bir tabirle dersek mesela artık sadece musluğu açmakla kalmıyor. Biraz da tesisat da sağlam mı ona bakmak gerekebiliyor. Bu çerçevede sizlerin kendi çalışma alanlarınızda, o çerçeveden baktığınızda Türkiye açısından enerji güvenliğinde bir temel risk ve bir temel fırsat olarak neleri görüyorsunuz? Bunlarla ilgili görüşlerinizi alabilirsek çok memnun olurum. Buyurun.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you so much.
Ben de öncelikle burada bulunmaktan dolayı büyük memnuniyetim.
I'm really glad to be with you here.
İzin verirseniz,
Well, if you allow me,
jeopolitik
I'll talk about the geopolitical developments and their effects over energy security. Well, Turkey, in the last 3 decades, have realized many projects. In terms of the developments in our geography, there has always been geopolitical risks, but today it has become even more acute. As Azerbaijan and Turkey, we have come to the realization of this 30 years ago when we were establishing Baku, Tbilisi and Ceyhan pipeline. There was many geopolitical developments as well, but today, especially after COVID-19 period, there was disruption in supply chain and they were even made deeper with the Russian and Ukrainian war and the developments in Middle East. And last summer, we all witnessed the changes and the aggression over Iran and Suez Canal and the disruption again in the supply chain, the ships were not going through the normal road. They were going around the Cape of Hope. Well, they were all affecting energy security. And today, China, it has also been mentioned previously, they were holding critical minerals, and so the tension between the US and China has affected the world. Maybe in the past it was not the case, but in recent weeks there was this new trend between the US and European Union. Well, nobody has thought of this beforehand. A government from the US imposed sanctions of an EU representative. Well, we have to diversify the scenarios right now. And it was already mentioned, energy security is an indispensable part of the national security. I think the most important risk in today's environment is the uncertainty that we cannot foresee the future. For that reason, we have to work on different scenarios. And with its own nature, like Mr. Minister has already stated, and Mr. Fatih has elaborated on, can provide different opportunities for Turkey as well. And with regards to these opportunities, in each and every field in the international policies, we see this. Even in the energy field, different alliances are emerging, different relationships are emerging. Well, Somalia, for example, Niger, Pakistan, and Libya, and there is also Azerbaijan. We work with Azerbaijan and we provide natural gas to Syria together with Azerbaijan, and Africa is very crucial for critical minerals. It's an important geography. Another important place which wasn't mentioned today is Central Asia. Well, we have to improve our relations with these countries so that it could provide important opportunities. Perhaps we need to just think out of the box and come up with more innovative methods to improve these relations. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Beris.
This unpredictability also appears in businesses. When we were doing long-term plans, initially we were talking about 10-year models for finances, but now we're only looking at 2 or 3 years ahead. So this unpredictability, yes, significantly plays an important role. Ms. Yasemin, I'm going to ask the same to you. So to avoid a repetition, I mean, in terms of uncertainties, unpredictabilities, I can also say we have a separate risk. So all of this infrastructure needs to be physically secured, as well as cybersecurity will be an important risk area. The physical security and cybersecurity can be both tackled with in terms of geopolitical risks, and there are also climate risks and other risks, for example, natural disasters like earthquake, etc. So it's important to manage these risks. There are opportunities, of course, as was mentioned. Energy industry and mining and mineral-related sectors, and we are talking about an overhauling and change, and every change has both opportunities as well as risks. So as Turkey, given our geographical location, our proximity to energy corridors, as well as the competencies in engineering and in positive sciences will speed up Turkey's energy transition, and
dışı geçişleri açısından bir ekonomik kalkınma unsuru olarak kullanmak adına
use these resources as elements of economic development. One last thing, both the risk and opportunity, something we need to change, is the following. As the industry and as all of the stakeholders, until now, all of our interactions have been done transactionally, focused on one specific topic. But this time, this has been, there are some things we need to do in a very short period of time in a collaborative way. So we need partnership models, and we need to talk about things in advance and come up with different models. Otherwise, these things can become a risk for both the country as well as other stakeholders, an opportunity if otherwise. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much. First of all,
son zamanlarda katılıp çok keyifle notlar
I would like to say that
motivasyon kazandığım bir toplantı oldu.
this is a meeting that I've so far enjoyed very much. I've taken a lot of notes. I want to thank you, Ms. Sabancı, Mr. Birol, as well as our minister.
Verdiği notlardan çok memnun
I've truly enjoyed the discussion so far. It's a great pleasure for me to be here because I was a part of the round table as well, and I'd like to thank Dr. Bora once again. So, very briefly, before I talk about the risks, as the mining industry, where do we find ourselves? Energy, green transition, critical minerals, rare earth elements. If we consider all of them as a digital ecosystem, I think mining would be the operating system. So, not having mining, all of these critical minerals, green transition, climate change, climate risk, the common denominator is the mining. Given such a tremendous potential, because according to a modeling study, we're talking about a $3.5 trillion worth of underground minerals, including coal, boron, gold, etc. To what extent are we aware of their location? To what extent have we explored these minerals? The answer is important, but also it's important where the world stands now, because we're no longer talking about oil wars, we're talking about mineral wars. So people are trying to gain a position in terms of mining and minerals. That being the case, we need to focus on exploration and, as Dr. Birol mentioned, on refining and technologies. So it's important to allocate resources to that, and maybe that's the greatest risk we have right now. A very concrete example, if I may, gold mining increased the pace in the 80s, and the risk capital arrived in a decade. So in 2001, our production was 0. Now we are doing 35 tons. And for rare earth elements and critical minerals, I foresee the same thing. The more we invest in exploration and development, we will be able to guarantee the following decade or decades. Beylikova is an important location for rare earth elements. We need to find nickel, cobalt, cadmium, because that is where the trends are going. Because we're going to need 6 times more minerals compared to conventional methods. So I think one of the greatest risks ahead of us is attracting capital, investing in exploration, because your minimum risk is 50%. You either have it or you don't. If you can find it, good, but if not, your money will be wasted. And
kapsamında da çeşitli
With
toplantılarda
Mr.
bir araya
Minister,
geliyoruz.
we also get
Dışişleri
together with
Bakanlığı'nın,
them under DEIC
değişik
capacity.
ülkelerle, ben Kanada DEIC İş Konseyi'nde de
I am
görev alıyorum.
also a member of the
Belirli,
Canada Council, Business
paydaşlar,
Council of DEIC.
üçüncü ülkelerde
So,
Türkiye'nin
with
yatırım yapması,
I mean, investing
katılması,
in
Sayın Bakanımız örneklerini verdiler. Bu çok
exploration
önemli.
activities of
Biz
Turkey,
kendi ülkemizdeki
and
kaynaklarımızın
it's important that
farkındalığını
Turkey takes
ortaya
part
çıkartmaya çalışırken
in
dışarıda da
partnerships.
fırsatları avlamaya çalışmalıyız
So,
diye
while
düşünüyorum.
working on
Çok daha fazla
domestic,
gelip fırsatı
we also
zamanı
should seek opportunities
kullanmak
elsewhere. So,
Şeyi çok seviyorum. Madenden mıknatısa.
I love the saying from a mineral to magnet.
Madeni üretmek değil.
It's not about producing the mineral. I'm saying this for rare earth elements. We need to bring it
bu şekilde dizebiliriz.
towards the end as an end product. So that is where I see the risk, and if we can achieve our success, we can eliminate all of these risks. So thank you very much, and as I hear from you, and as I look at risk management activities in our company, I realize that we've seen this frequently because we simultaneously talk about opportunities as we talk about the risks, and it helps us understand how important it is to see the opportunities embedded in the risks. So, let's talk about energy diplomacy. I always call it that way because I was born and raised in the Soviet Union. Energy diplomacy has been an important topic. So energy diplomacy is like playing chess. But recently, I mean, chess is played, two people play chess, but now we have players around the chessboard, and there are others sitting next to the players. As the energy transition picks up the pace, geopolitical elements are not eliminated but change shape. On one hand, you have the critical minerals, you have the friendshoring, you have the trade limitations, which shows as energy diplomacy becomes more and more important. So what are some of the priorities for Turkey in this area?
Sağ olun, çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you so much. Well, like you said, energy diplomacy has become a very difficult. It has become like an art, a challenging one indeed. And an important factor is that your mobility margin is not as wide as you wish it to be. In the past, there were certain limitations, but today, especially due to the US and EU, there is sanction-based foreign policy. Even though Turkey does not participate in unilateral sanctions, just because these sanctions are approved by the UN Security Council, Turkey has to obey them. But you know this better than us. The private sector works with the financial institutions, and they are definitely in line with the sanctions. So for that reason, when we improve our energy strategy, if we look around us, we have a really important geostrategic position. But let's talk about Iran. Because of sanctions over Iran, Turkey is a bit reserved in developing its strategy with Iran. It's not very possible to take a step for development of the energy relations. And very lately we have given importance to these projects with Azerbaijan. We are working on the Turkmen gas. Well, the Turkmenistan gas project is on our radar right now, and especially in recent times, the change in the administration in the US, the Trump's government face towards hydrocarbons. They are not very much keen on clean energy, and the messages that they have given and certain policy changes of some international companies, and the gas is still seen as a transient way or component, and certain positive developments in the region make us believe that we can work on the Turkmenistan gas. But at the same time, there are messages coming from the EU, and the EU does not want to be in long-term agreements. And by prioritizing the climate change, there's an exit policy from hydrocarbons. Well, this is the message that they give to us. Well, we can feel a bit overwhelmed in our energy policies. And on the other side, as Mr. Minister has mentioned, Iraq is really crucial for us, both for petroleum, renewable energy, electricity, gas, and on the other side, our relations with Europe. While doing this, so we have to improve our infrastructure internally as well. We should bring additional flexibilities to our country. And the USA is very crucial as well. In our energy diplomacy, nuclear energy plays an important role, and South Korea, the US, and with respect to SMRs, we are now thinking on initiating certain works with the US on SMRs. Well, these are the components that we are working on. Critical minerals, let's talk about this, as Mr. Mehmet has mentioned as well. When we say energy diplomacy, or if we talk about critical minerals, our official institutions should work together and a synergy should be created, and at the same time there should be a good connection between private and public sector, because one of the most important assets of the foreign ministry is our establishments in abroad, and we have a great deal of representatives abroad, and we have to exchange information with these institutions and in our domestic agencies, and in the private sector, we need to take some concrete steps. These are important issues. And yeah, that's it for now. Thank you so much. Mehmet Bey, Mr. Mehmet. Well, in the past, mining was related to underground, but now this is defined as it is related to industrial policies over the ground. According to the data of the International Energy Agency, technologies of the sustainable and clean energy, the demand for these minerals is going to increase by 2-folds or 4-folds by 2030. This does not limit mining with respect to energy transformation, but it also extends it towards the supply security and overall transformation. So, according to you, the growth of energy sector, mining sector, energy security, and what is the relation among these components? What could be used as a leverage? What is your opinion? Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Well, thank you.
Şöyle söyleyeyim. Jeoloji mühendisiyim.
I'm a geology engineer, by the way, and geologic potential of Turkey, from one aspect, is full of with risks. There is this fault lines on the southern part, northern part, and block fault lines in Aegean region. Well, all in all, they could bring us earthquakes and big disasters, but they can also lead us to a great ore generations in central Anatolia. So that's why in underground we can talk about $3.5 billion of assets. But these are not the current calculation, by the way. These are the numbers of 25 years ago, for example. Well, we could say that 5,000 tons of gold, perhaps it could be 15,000 or 20,000. That's
böyle
why,
bir pozisyondayken
while we are in such a
ve
position,
Statien Belt
and
dediğimiz
there's a Statien
Kuzey
Belt,
Avrupa'dan başlayıp
starting from
Anadolu'nun
Northern
içinden
Europe,
geçip
going
İran'a doğru
into
sarkan bir uçak
Anatolia
üzerinde
and
olmamız
extending to Iran.
bizim
We're
için
in this
hem
belt.
kritik mineraller
Well, this
hem de Orta
means
Anadolu
that we have
bölgesindeki nadir toprak
great critical
elementleri
minerals, and
açısından
in the
baktığımızda
Anatolia we
çok
have
büyük bir
a
potansiyel
rare
var.
earth mineral,
İki
so we have a
noktaya
great
temas etmek
potential.
istiyorum.
I'd like to talk about
Bir
two
tanesi
issues. One is
bizim
that
her ülkenin kendine göre
each and every
yayınlamış
country
olduğu kritik
has its
mineraller
own
listemizi
critical mineral lists,
bugünkü
and
dinamiklerle
our
ve
list
yeni mevzuat
should be
değişimlerinin ışığı altında hızlıca güncellenmesi
reviewed
lazım.
based on the
Çok doğru, çok
new
güzel bir kritik
developments,
mineraller
and
listemiz
under
var.
the light of
Ama
new
ilave
regulation.
neleri
We have a
koyabiliriz
great
diye
critical list,
düşündüğümüzde
but
ki
maybe we can
enerjiye
add
buradan
new things.
atladığımda
And if we skip
ben
from this to
Sayın
energy,
Bakanımın altını çizdiği
as
bu
Mr.
baz
Minister
yük
has
ve kömür
underlined the
konusunda
importance of coal and base
Türkiye'nin
load,
halen
Turkey
biraz daha hassas olması
should be
gerektiğini
more
düşünüyorum.
sensitive about this, I
Yani bugün
believe.
Avrupa'nın
Well,
herhangi
today,
bir ülkesinin
any country
topraklarında
of
22
Europe,
milyar ton kömür
if
potansiyeli
they talk about
olsaydı
22
hiç bu
billion
kadar kolay
tons of coal,
vazgeçemeyebilirlerdi diye
it might not be that
düşünüyorum.
easy for them to
Teknolojiyi
give up.
uygulayarak temiz
Well,
kömür
by applying
teknolojileriyle
clean coal
bunun bir
technology,
kısmını halen daha
perhaps
biz
some of
bazı
it
ülkede
could be
kullanabiliriz diye
used for our
düşünüyorum.
base load.
İkinci bir konu
And
ki
second issue
bugünün
is related to
dünyasında çok global bir
the
değer.
new global value of
Sürdürülebilirlik
today's
çok
world.
önemli bir
Sustainability, as you know,
Ee,
is an incredibly important topic.
İnsanı, doğayı ön plana koyarak
Well, it prioritizes
halkla
environment
ilişkileri
and human
çok
beings.
önemseyerek
It
çünkü ne
attaches
yaptığınızı anlatmak
importance to
zorundasınız.
your
Aksi
relations with
takdirde
public. You have to explain
fiziğin
what you
kuralı
do.
boş kalan
Otherwise,
yeri
this is
başka
the nature
güçler
of the
doldurmaya başlıyor.
this is
Ülke
the law of the
menfaatinin
nature.
aleyhine olacak
When there is a void,
şekilde.
it is
Son
filled
olarak
with
da
something
şeffaflık.
else.
Hem
So
raporlamada,
transparency is
çevresel
very crucial in
faaliyetlerde ve
reporting
finansal
for your environmental
işlerde
activities,
şeffaf
for your
olmak,
financial
bütün bunların
activities. You have to
temelinde
be
de,
transparent.
bir
And all in all,
sürdürülebilirlik
you need
ilkesiyle
to
yürümek
act
lazım.
with the
Çünkü,
sustainability
geçen,
principle,
yine bir
because
konuda gündeme geldi.
it was also one
Biz
of the
eğer
important topics
bu
very lately.
sürdürülebilirlik konusunda
If
kendimize
we
iyi bir skor edinemezsek,
cannot get a
madencilik
good
sektörü olarak söylüyorum,
rating for ourselves in the mining
ileride
sector for
bunun içinde
sustainability
aktif rol alırken
in the future, when we
haklı
are
veya
in
haksız
this
sebeplerle
actively
kendimizi çok
with
kötü bir
righteous or
pozisyonda bulabiliriz.
unrighteous reasons, we might find
Bunun
ourselves
içinde
in a
bir
really
konu
troubled
başlığı var ki
situation.
hem elektrikte,
In
yeşil
electricity,
dönüşümde, her
in
yerde
green transition,
bir tık
in
ilerisini
every field.
düşündüğümüzde
When
benim
you
hep
think
aklımda olan
one
bir
step
şeydir.
ahead,
Bunu
this is
sizlerle
something which is
paylaşmak
always
isterim.
on my mind. I'd like to share this with you.
Recycling'de çok para
Recycling
harcamamız
should
lazım.
be allocated
Birazcık,
more money. We should spend more
vakit
money on this,
harcamamız
and we
lazım.
have to spend more
Bu kadar
time on
bataryalar
recycling.
bu
There are
araçlarda kullanıldıktan
a lot of
sonra
batteries, when they are
önümüzdeki
used in
belki
these
10 yıl, 15 yıl
vehicles
sonra
in
bu
10 years or
bataryaların
15 years
geri kazanımı
from
veya
now on, rehabilitation or
anlamında yapılması
recycling of
gereken
these batteries,
teknolojilere
new
bugünden
technologies
para
are
ve
going
vakit
to be needed, and
harcamamız
we
lazım.
have to allocate
Recycling
time and
gelecekte çok
money
önemli
for
bir konu
these
başlığı
technologies.
olacak diye
Recycling is
düşünüyorum.
going to be really crucial in the
Tabii
future.
konu çok uzun.
Well, the topic is
Madencilikle
really
ilgili
wide, really
söylenecek çok
deep.
şey
There
var
are
ama
many things to say about
burada
mining,
kesin
but
daha
let me
sonra
stop here, then we can continue. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür. Bu recycling konusunda
Thank
da
you.
son dönemde
And about
en önemli
recycling,
trend,
one of the most important
ürünü dizayn ederken
trends
onu
recently
ileride
is when designing the
daha
product,
düzgün şekilde recycle edilecek şekilde
it should be
dizayn
designed in a way that will allow recycling
Peki bu da
properly,
işte malzeme bilimi, material science dediğimiz konu.
which
Burada
is
da
what we call
Sabancı
material
Üniversitesi'nin
science.
özellikle
And
yaptıkları çalışmalardan da
I would like to congratulate Sabancı University in their efforts because they're doing amazing
Yasemin
work.
Hanım, Fatih Bey de sıkça vurguladı
Now,
elektrik
Yasemin,
çağına giriyoruz.
we are moving on to electrification era,
diye. Ama sanki
but
elektrik vardan daha öte.
it's not
elektrik
about
istediğimiz yerde mi
electricity,
var? Elektrik
having
her zaman
electricity, but do we have it
elde
where we
ettiğimiz
want
elektrik
it,
temiz ve güvenli
whenever we want it? Is
konular
it
da
safe
çok önem arz etmeye başladı.
and is it
Bu anlamda
secure?
bu geçiş sürecinde,
So
elektrik çağına
in
geçiş
this
sürecinde
transition
henüz
period,
elektrifikasyonla enerji güvenliği
clean electrification and energy security,
çok kolay değil.
having two of them at the same time is not easy. So what are some critical risks and opportunities in this area?
Şimdi belki şeyle başlayabiliriz. Neden elektrik
Maybe we can talk about why we
üzerinden
call
nasıl
it the
geldik?
era of
Pandemi sonrası
electricity.
artan enerji talebini hangi
So,
enerji kaynağı karşılayacakla ilgili pek çok sektör paydaşı
after the
farklı
pandemic,
mecralarda hem çalışmalar
different
yaptılar, hem
stakeholders have
bulundu.
conducted
Ve,
studies
yakın
and
geçmişte,
looked at the
bu
feasibility
artan talebi,
studies, and
karşılayacak ana enerji kaynağının
they've realized that
olduğu
electricity
paydaşlar, bütün otoriteler
would be the
tarafından
main
kabul edildi.
source to
Yani
meet this
2024
rising demand
itibariyle
for
aslında
energy.
elektrik çağına
So
başladık. Tabii
we
bu
have started this
elektrik
age of
çağına
electricity,
geçişte
and in this transition, as you mentioned,
enerjiye yönelimle ilgili
there were
ajandaların da çok büyük
agendas
önemi var.
regarding clean energy.
Sayın Bakanımız da bahsetti.
As Mr.
Türkiye'nin de
Minister
temiz
mentioned,
enerji,
Türkiye,
politikaları anlamında
in terms
ciddi
of clean
bir
energy
hedefi var.
policies,
Şu anda
have a
bulunduğu,
very ambitious
pozisyonda
target,
hiç, azımsanacak bir
and we're in
pozisyon
a
değil.
very great state
Yalnız
right
temiz
now,
enerjinin,
but
şebekelere bağlanması sadece bu temiz enerji
clean energy
yatırımlarının gerçekleştirilmesiyle,
being connected to the grids
tamamlanmıyor.
cannot be done only
Rüzgar
by these
olsun, güneş
investments,
olsun,
be
bu
it
temiz
wind or
enerji
solar.
kaynaklarının,
These clean energy
değişken
resources,
doğalarından dolayı,
given
yani
their
rüzgarın
fluctuating
esmesi, güneşin, olur
resources,
olması,
if the wind is blowing, if the
üretim
sun is
noktalarından
shining,
tüketim noktalarına
so
bu enerjinin,
their transmission
üretilmesi ve dağıtılması
from production to
noktasında aslında
consumption
altyapımıza ciddi, problem alanları oluşturuyor.
create
Ve bu
significant
problem
bottlenecks in our
alanlarının
infrastructure.
enerjinin üretim ve üretim tarafındaki yatırım planlarıyla
So
eş zamanlı
they need
olarak
to be
çözülmesi
solved
gerekiyor.
simultaneously
COP29'dan
with the
itibaren
investment
aslında bu
plan
temiz
for the
enerjilerin,
establishment of these facilities.
kullanılabilir
Since
olmasıyla
COP29,
ilgili şebekelerin kısıt olması bütün dünya çapında
grid
bir risk
limitations
olarak
have been
ortaya
identified
kondu.
as a risk
COP29'da
globally.
yaklaşık 3
At COP29, we were talking about 3,000 gigawatts, and COP30, it became 1,000 gigawatts. So having clean energy investment does not necessarily mean it's immediately usable. So it's not about physical lines or transformation facilities, but also the technicalities should be solved.
Bu önemli bir odaklanması
So this is an
gereken
important
risk alanı.
focal
Burada
point.
şebekenin kararlılığı olarak belki özetleyebiliriz. Burada da zaten bunun doğru şekilde yapılmadığı durumda ya da
So when it's not done properly,
şebekedeki payı büyüdükçe ne tarz riskler
and what kind of risks can be, seen in terms of growth? I mean, very recently we've seen this example in Spain, which was a prolonged power cuts, and it taught a lot of lessons to many countries in the world. As we transition to clean energy, transition from transformers to inversion systems and new technologies being used, these are the topics we need to focus as an industry.
Belki temiz enerjinin güvenli bir şekilde kullanılabilmesi anlamında altını çizebileceğim nokta.
So these are the topics we can highlight. Number 2, physical and cyber risks, cybersecurity risks should definitely be addressed. And when such an attack happens or such an issue happens, we need to have plans in place to mitigate these issues. And this is another focal point we need to focus on. Another thing is, I think the discussions in the morning were very, very important because climate issues, even though they're not at the forefront given the current situation, hopefully we will not have to remember them in the form of a wake-up call. The world spends significant resources to pay for the cost of climate risks. So if we can mobilize these opportunities in the right time, we will be able to manage these risks accordingly. So there are climate-related risks and mineral and mining-related risks. Water is a natural resource. It's not a mineral, but when it plays a very significant role in energy and mining and minerals. So minerals and water connection were a hot topic in the previous COP. So given the energy security and infrastructure, we should also tackle with water shortage, and long-term plans and policies should prioritize it. And in terms of opportunities,
özellikle ilk baştaki şebeke altyapı ile ilgili kararsızlık problemleri,
the uncertainties, indecisiveness, or cybersecurity risks
teknoloji paydaşlarında mevcut. Dolayısıyla
can be managed with existing technologies. So what we have to do, technology providers, investors, and decision makers should collaborate to achieve the targets for 2035 and 2053, and they should make sure the infrastructure is safe and secure and prioritize their investments accordingly. So technology will be a good opportunity for us. Again, for Turkey, the same issues for mining and mineral were discussed in Europe regarding grid infrastructures and energy infrastructures. So they have also looked at it from this perspective. And something to be proud of in Turkey, Turkey is among the countries where EU is reliant on when it comes to energy. As Turkey, we hold 10% share in terms of meeting the energy needs of EU. And in terms of cells and cabling, we have a share of 4 to 5%. I'm talking about being an energy supplier to overall European Union. The new technologies I've mentioned, the investments are not to be in Turkey alone, but also globally. So having these investments in Turkey, specifically in terms of engineering and generation, if we can become a country of added value, we can increase our share in new technologies, battery technologies, HVDC technologies, or power quality. And Turkey can strengthen its geopolitical position. And on the other hand, we can translate this added value to economic development. And I think this will require collaboration from all stakeholders in Turkey. Thank you. Distinguished Ambassador, if we are to focus on critical minerals, I mean, we've discussed energy diversification, but on the other hand, we are talking about intensification in critical minerals because the supply is dominated by a couple of countries and companies. So, what kind of partnerships would help Turkey to turn this into an opportunity?
Like you said, in recent years, critical minerals have gained big importance. But today, it was mentioned as well, there is a big global power imbalance in critical minerals, and it creates insecurity perception in the global arena. In one of the meetings of the International Energy Agency, they say that China is 10 years ahead of other countries in critical minerals. And here, Turkey works in certain mechanisms. Well, we have to work on our mechanisms, and we should work with our partners as well. Today, like I mentioned, we need to work with the institutions and private sector partners. We cannot work on everywhere, and we cannot focus on all countries. So we have to choose some countries and collaborate with them. Well, they could be African countries, Central Asia, or Latin America. Well, we need to work on these areas. On the other side, as Mr. Minister has mentioned, mineral security partnership is very crucial. Turkey attaches importance to this. by the US and EU, this initiative is supported. This partnership is supported, but Trump administration's perspective over this is not certain yet. We do not know it. That's why, in terms of this partnership, there is certain pauses now, and Turkey
platformlarda yer almasının önemli olduğunu düşünüyoruz.
should take place in this multi-partner platforms. Again, specific to Azerbaijan and Africa, we can work in different areas in win-win positions, but at the same time, I'd like to focus on Africa. Our network in Africa is really wide. There's Turkish Airlines, etc. Some countries can enter into these countries along with Turkey, and perhaps finance is the biggest exam to take. So in terms of the finance, we need to find some solutions, and a mechanism should facilitate finance solutions. The US or the EU or Japan or South Korea, these countries should work with Middle East and Africa with Turkey. They have already proposed their recommendations and there are some agreements. Thank you so much.
Mehmet Bey, Yasemin Hanım, sizlere de birer
Mehmet, Yasemin,
son soruyu
and last
soracağım.
questions
Sonra
for you
hepinize
then.
ortak çok kısa bir
We will have
soru
the
soracağım.
last round
Bonus soru olarak.
as a bonus question perhaps.
Mehmet Bey,
Mehmet.
madencilik biraz ne kadar çıkardık sorusundan sanki çıkarınca kimin işine yarayacak?
How much are we
çıkardıktan sonraki süreçte
taking out in the mines and how can we have this added value?
Rafinasyonun önemli katma değer yarattığını söylediniz.
You said the
Bunu biraz daha
refining
genişletecek olursak, yani madencilikten sonra
is
rafinasyon,
adding some
zenginleştirme,
benefits.
hatta geri
So
dönüm
refining, recycling,
üstünde
rehabilitation. If
düşündüğümüzde,
you think of all these
dernek olarak
as the
süreçlerde
association
katma değer kazanmanın sürdürülebilir yollarını bulma açısından
in terms of
çalışmalar
finding the
yapıyorsunuz.
sustainable ways
Neler
for
öncelik veriyorsunuz?
added value creation.
çok
What
teşekkür
are
ederim.
your
Şimdi,
works? Thank you so much.
Gerçekten zaten bizim sektör olarak kendimizi geliştirmemiz, improve etmemiz gereken bir alan orası.
This is an area that we have to improve ourselves. Sustainability is really crucial because no matter how high the value that you create, unless your water is clean, your air is pure, your earth is clean, what you produce is not valuable. I worked as a general manager in Sadrettin Alpan was the general manager of MTA, and he said that mines can make a human being survive. But at first, you might not understand this very well, but in terms of the health, in terms of the daily routines, activities, whatever we touch, there's mining as human beings. And in our lives, the most important part is defense. Of course, there is mining too. So these two precious areas involve mining, and if you want mining to be more effective, mining perspective should be made more decent. Well, after providing this importance, as Turkey's mining association, very recently we launched a script about sustainability principles of mining. It was the purpose here. In certain NGOs, mainly working on mining, we have a mining platform too. In this platform, there are 18 NGOs, and it was our purpose. Well, our members, when we have them, they should be motivated to produce in the standards. They should then follow these rules as a must. Well, unless we realize them, we cannot defend you. Or when something happens to you, I cannot prove that you use the technology properly. I'm so sorry, you cannot be with us anymore. Well, this was our rationale
beş yıllık
in
bir
this
planla
preparation,
yürütmeye gayret ediyoruz
and
ki bu
we
çok
are
önemli.
exerting efforts to conduct this in
Bir
3-year
dipnot
and
geri
5-year
dönerek
plans.
savunmayla
This is
ilgili
very
bir şey
crucial.
söylemek
And let
istiyorum.
me say something else about
Biz bu
defense.
sene
Well,
2025
this year
yılında
in
Kanada
2025,
İş Konseyi olarak
as the Canada
Toronto Global
Business
Forum'una
Council,
katıldık.
we
Konu başlığı
participated in
savunmaydı.
Toronto Global
İnanın,
Forum,
10.
and the main
dakikada
topic was about defense.
konu
Believe in me
savunmayla
that
beraber
in minute
madenciliğe
10,
geldi.
defense topic
Kritik
was
minerallere
supported with
geldi.
mining,
Nadir
critical
toprak
minerals,
elementlerine geldi.
rare earth minerals,
İşte drone
and
teknolojileri,
drone technologies, lens
lens
technologies,
elektrikli
and
motorlar,
electrical
mıknatıs
engines
teknolojileri derken
and magnet
konu
technologies.
madenlere geldiğinde biz
Well,
yine
when it was
sürdürülebilirlik
about mining, we
konuşmaya
started to talk about
Dolayısıyla
sustainability.
sorunuz çok
So
önemli
your
bir noktaya
question
işaret ediyor.
touches
Biz onun
an
için bu
important
noktayı
point.
Türkiye Madenciler Derneği olarak
That's
çok
why, as our
önemsiyoruz.
association, we attach importance to
Bakanlığımız,
this
başta
a
Enerji
lot.
Bakanımız, MAPEK Genel Müdürlüğümüz
MAPEC
bize
General
çok ciddi destek
Directorate
veriyor.
and the
Aynı
ministry,
desteği Çevre
they support
Bakanlığı'ndan
us
da görüyoruz.
significantly, and
Çünkü
we
biz
receive the same
artık
support from the Ministry
özel
of
sektör mü,
Environment,
devlet mi
because
diye
we
bakmıyoruz.
do not see this
Sektörel
as
bazda
private
bu
sector
sektörün
or public
algısını
sector, but
doğru
we
yere
see this as a holistic.
oturtabilirsek, insan
If
yaşamında,
we make this
yeşil
perception
dönüşümde, savunma tarafında
really settled and
madenciliğin
properly,
önemini çok daha iyi
then I
ortaya
believe that
koyabiliriz. Çünkü
mining's
çok iyi biliyoruz.
importance could be understood
Bazı noktalarda,
better,
bazı
because we know this very
gruplarla
well. In some points,
anlaşmakta
with
bazen
certain
aynı dili
groups, it's
kullanmakta
very easy
zorlanıyoruz ama
to
herkes bu ülkenin
explain
menfaati
yourselves.
için
Perhaps
bir şeyler
we
yapmaya çalışıyor.
try to use the
Onun
same
için
language,
birbirimize
but
karşı
yes, sometimes
vicdansızca
we
davranmak
might be
yerine biraz daha
merciless
böyle
to each other,
hoşgörü ve
but rather than
şefkatle
doing
bakıp
this, we
birbirimizi
should
anlarsak
understand each
memleketimize
other.
daha
We should be
vefalı
more
işler
tolerant so
yapmış
that
oluruz
we
diye
could
düşünüyorum.
work for the sake of
Çok
our
teşekkür
country.
ediyorum.
Thank you
Sağ
very
olun.
much. Thank you.
Yasemin Hanım, elektrifikasyon ile kritik mineraller arasında güçlü bir bağ olduğunu
There is a strong bond link between electrification and critical minerals, and of course,
bulunmaz Hint kumaşı olduğunu da görüyoruz. Yavaş yavaş oraya doğru giden bir süreç var. Biraz önce
but critical minerals are actually quite rare because of the
bunu çözmenin
intensification
yolu da
we've mentioned.
materyaller bulabilmek.
And the solution is to find substitutes
Meslek
for
seçimine
electrification.
yaklaşma yaşında olan çocuklarım var.
So I have kids who are about to choose a profession, and they frequently ask me, what do you think we should be?
Testler yapıyoruz.
So we have certain
Mülakatlara
tests,
sokuyorum
certain
onları.
interviews,
Üzerinde görüşüyoruz. En sonunda şunu dedim kendilerine.
and
Dedim
I
ki,
told
hangi
them,
mesleği seçerseniz
whatever
seçin,
profession you end up
yeter ki
choosing,
mühendisler kadar özgüveniniz olsun.
have
Mühendisler kadar
the
özgüven.
self-confidence of
İkinci bir,
engineers.
grup görmezler.
I mean,
grubu
that
görün.
is the group of professionals with the highest level of confidence.
Çünkü ne söylersek
Because
işte bu
whatever
ben onun
we
bir
say,
kahvesini
for
yaparım.
example,
Ben onun bir
I'll
çözümü
find a
bulurum,
substitute, I'll find a solution,
yolu
I'll develop a
getiririz.
technology for that. So that's
Burada elektrifikasyona kritik mineraller bulunmadığı zaman
so when we cannot find critical minerals to support electrification, substitute technologies, new technologies, do you think we have a promising future?
Öncelikle bir mühendis olarak teşekkür
As an engineer, thank you for your
Umarım
remarks.
istedikleri
Hope
mesleklerde çok mutlu
Your kids will be happy with the professions that they choose.
Muadile gelmeden
Now,
önce,
before we talk
önce
about substitutes,
mevcut altyapımızı doğru ve verimli kullanıyor muyuz? Bence birincil ona
we need to ask
bakıyor
ourselves
olmamız
whether or not
gerekiyor.
we're using the current
Bu da,
infrastructure in the current
yaklaşık 5 yıl
accurate
kadar önce
and
hem enerji
efficient
alanında hem
way.
daha farklı platformlarda,
And about 5 years
verimlilik
ago,
projeleriyle mevcut altyapıların yapılan yatırımların daha etkin
we've seen that
kullanılması
efficiency
anlamında gündeme
projects
geldi. Fakat
being
sadece
used,
Türkiye değil, bütün dünyada
resources
bu
being used more
verimlilik tarafı,
effectively. This has become a hot
şey,
topic in the recent years, but this
beklediğini getiremedi.
efficiency
Orada tabii
did
teknik,
not
boşluklar da,
turn out to
aksaklıklar da
be
var ama
what it was
öncelikli olarak
expected.
bütün dünya, tabii ki
Of
Türkiye
course,
olarak da
we're talking
bir,
globally
kritik
and for
olduğunu
Turkey
düşündüğümüz,
specifically.
madenlerin ya da minerallerin
The
vesaire
elements and
kullanıldığı
minerals we
altyapı,
believe
mevcut
to
altyapıyı
be
doğru
rare,
verimlilikle kullanıyor muyuz?
are
Onu
we
bir
using the
sormamız
current
lazım.
infrastructure with the right
Belki,
efficiency?
bu mevcut altyapımızı küçük eklentilerle, küçük
Maybe we
teknolojik
can have some
çözümlerle,
small
belki
add-ons
bir dijital
or
altyapıyla
technological
daha,
solutions or a
büyük
digital
bir verimle,
infrastructure
kullanma
to
olasılığımız
increase the
olabilir.
efficiency of
Dolayısıyla
existing
teknolojinin geldiği
infrastructure.
noktayı
So,
bu altyapıyı daha etkin ve daha büyük kapasiteyle nasıl kullanabiliriz? Bence
how can we
birinci,
use it with the
başlığımız
more
bu
effective
olmalı.
and more efficient
Muadile gelmeden
capacity?
ikinci başlığım
And the
olacak.
second
Hatta
thing,
Mehmet
before we
Bey
move
gibi
on to
ben de geri
substitutes,
dönüşüm ve yeniden
recycling
kullanım.
and
Yani ya aynı amaç için
reusing
ya da farklı amaç için
for
bu
the same
kritik,
purpose or for another
kaynakların
purpose.
mutlaka tekrar
These
ekonomiye
critical
kazandırılması
resources should
gerektiğini,
definitely be
bizim de
cycled back
Türkiye
to,
olarak
circled
bir
back to
politika
economy.
olarak
And it should be a
benimsiyor olmamız
policy for
gerektiğini
Turkey as
düşünüyorum.
well.
Yine mesela Avrupa'dan örnek verecek olursak,
Let's give an
Avrupa'nın
example from
çıkardığı bu
Europe.
Critical Raw Material
The
Act
Critical Raw
içerisinde,
Material Act of the European
2030 açısından
Union
şöyle bir hedefleri var. Bütün
has
bu,
a target
belirledikleri
for
stratejik ve
2030
kritik,
for all of these
madenler ve,
strategic and
toprak
critical
elementleriyle alakalı
minerals
her
and
birinde,
rare earth
%25'lik,
elements. All of
geri
them
dönüşüm ve yeniden,
need to be
kullanım hedefi var.
recycled and reused
Tabii
for
bu,
up to
stratejiler ve
25%.
politikalar bu şekilde
And
net ortaya konulduğunda tabii bu da,
Since you have these
beraberinde
strategies and
belli
policies in place,
yatırımları,
clearly
ve,
it would
sektörün
bring
bu noktalara
new
odaklanmasını
investments
getiriyor.
and
Dolayısıyla,
it
geri
becomes a
dönüşümde de
focus for the
mutlaka
industry.
hani,
So recycling
bu
should definitely
kısıt,
be
kaynakların
a
daha etkin
topic
kullanılması
to make
anlamında
better
bir
use of these
tutmamız
limited
lazım.
resources.
Soruya geldiğimde muadil teknolojiler, tabii teknoloji de
And
olduğu
what
yerde
about some
durmuyor. Hem
substitutes? I mean,
kısıtları,
technology is not
aşmak
standing
anlamında,
still, both in terms
hem
of
de daha
overcoming these
performanslı
limitations
sonuç
and
üretecek,
enhancing the
maden
performance
mineral
of
olarak
the
hangi,
outcomes.
Elementleri kullanabiliriz? Bununla
Which
ilgili
elements?
çalışmalar
I mean,
devam
studies
ediyor. Örneğin
continue.
enerji
For
sektörü
example,
dendiğinde
for the
işte
energy
bakır,
industry,
lityum,
copper,
nikel,
lithium,
ve
nickel,
işte mıknatısta kullanılan nadir toprak
and
elementleri
rare earth
konuşuluyor.
elements used in
Buralara
magnet
biraz
come to the
örnek verecek olursak
forefront.
işte lityum iyon
For
bataryaları
lithium-ion
şu anda
batteries,
ağırlıklı sodyum iyon, belli
mostly
yerlerde
are
karbon
substituted with
dioksit,
sodium
enerjide
ion
kullanılan,
and carbon dioxide
aracı olarak
as a
kullanılması
tool
gibi
for
yeni,
energy
teknolojiler
storage. So
belirlenme
these
ve ölçekleme
new
pilot,
technologies
kullanım
are being
aşamalarında.
piloted
Bunun dışında,
to substitute lithium.
mesela bakır tarafına gelecek olursak,
For
bakır
copper,
sektörde bazı
copper
konularda
industry,
bu
in some
haberleşme,
cases,
yani iki
I mean mostly
arasındaki
used
haberleşme
in
içinde
communication.
kullanılıyor. Burada
Again,
muadil teknoloji olarak
what is
daha,
the substitute?
dijital haberleşme teknolojileri burada düşünüldüğünde,
Digital communication
mesela oradaki
technologies
kullanımı otomatik olarak azaltmış oluyorsunuz. Daha
can
olmazsa
automatically
olmaz,
decrease the level of
kullanılması
copper
gereken
use,
yerlere,
and you can have more
yönlendirmiş
copper for
oluyorsunuz.
more
Burada da,
indispensable
aynen bahsettiğim
areas
gibi belli
of
kısıtları
use.
aşmak
So
için,
this is about
muadil
overcoming
olarak, yani
certain
problemleri,
limitations
mühendislik
and, you
disiplini
know,
içerisinde çözeceğimiz yapıyı bulundurmamız
avoiding
gerekiyor.
some of the problems.
Günümüzde
And today,
mühendislik disiplinlerinin
engineering
özellikle bu problem
disciplines
alanlarını çözmek için bugüne kadar olmadığı kadar bir arada çalışması gerekiyor.
need to work
Elektronik,
together
malzeme, kimya bunların
than ever
bahsettiğimiz,
before.
kısıtları çözmek için, aynı
Electrical,
şekilde maden bir arada,
electronical, and
çalışıyor
chemical
olmaları,
engineering, as well as mining
gerekiyor.
engineers,
Bir taraftan
should be
da
working
ama
together
yeni
to
kısıtlar da
overcome these
oluşacaktır.
bottlenecks.
Onu
But there
da,
will also
söyleyebilirim. Çünkü,
be new
bahsettiğim
limitations
gibi daha
emerging,
performanslı,
because,
ben bu
as I've
işi nasıl
mentioned,
yaparım
the
dendiğinde
question is
mesela
about
silikon,
improving
silisyumla yapılan belli,
performance.
çalışmalar şu anda sektörde
For example,
görüyoruz ki
certain
silisyum karbide
studies
doğru yönleniyor. Bu mesela
are showing us
silisyumdan
that silicium
daha nadir bir,
carbide
maden
is
bakıldığında,
more prominent,
coğrafyada.
but it's more even more rare than silicium itself. So the limitations can be overcome at a certain point, but solution to some problems might be triggering others along the way. What matters is that we address this dynamic, ever-changing situation with the collaboration of different disciplines of engineering and academia, so that we can have a roadmap for both the country and globally.
Çok teşekkürler Yasemin Hanım. Son ortak sorumuz. Burada çok kısa cevaplar alırsam
And one last question, because we're way out of time, so I will ask for short answers to this. This is going to be a shared question. In Azerbaijan, the last dish to table is pilav, rice. So it is the shah, it's the king of the table.
Burada da bütün konuştuğumuz konular içerisinde bence sofraların şahı. Bence az solist olan konu insan
And
kaynağı.
human resources actually is the shah of the table. So last question will be about the people.
En kritik mineral
The most critical
insan
mineral
denir.
is
Bu biraz
people.
klişe ifade.
Might sound cliche,
Ama
but
klişelerde de doğruluk payı
it wouldn't be a cliche if it hadn't been true.
Dolayısıyla klişeler her zaman bir
So,
doğruluk payı.
cliches always have certain
İnsan
truth to
kaynağını
it.
düşündüğümüzde
Given the human resources, both in terms of energy efficiency, physical capacity, and the use of resources,
kurumsal kapasitenin de çok önemli rol oynadı.
we believe human resources and corporate capacity play an important role. So, given your own particular fields, especially about critical minerals,
daha gelişmiş bir seviyeye.
how can we improve human resources, the skill set, from 1.2 to 2.1?
Hangi 2-3 temel
What are some of the foundational moves we can make?
cevaplarınızı alabilirsek?
Very briefly, please. Let's start with you, Distinguished Ambassador. If you allow me, I'll start with Azerbaijan Pilav because it was between 1999 and 2001, and I was stationed at Baku Embassy, and when we had presidents visiting, as you said, in official ceremonies, Pilav was the last one to arrive, and I love it the most. And until the Pilav arrived, the delegations would leave, and I could not eat Azerbaijan Pilav in any of the official dinners. Hopefully we will host you one day.
İnsan kaynağında baktığımız vakit yani hem bizim kritik mineraller olsun bence.
So both in terms of critical minerals and in any area, human resources is the most important thing, and training and education, specialization play the most important role. R&D activities, in our case as well, because you need to have some input to generate different scenarios as well. This applies to our ministries too. And this is important both internally and externally. These relations should be based on mutual trust, and obviously keeping up with the technological developments, given the nature of this discipline. With climate change, Turkey is about to transition to a different form of production. This also applies to a lot of other countries. Turkey, with its close commercial ties with the European Union, will need to adopt the new change as well, because, I mean, sometimes I realize that the private sector is way ahead of the public sector in this type of preparation. So what matters is to have the human resources capable of keeping up with technological developments and their training and education. I mean, it's up to us. Thank you. Yes, human resources, people are indispensable. We're talking about the changes and transitions and transformations, and the common denominator will be the people. Of course, the capabilities of the existing staff can be increased. We can have them upskilled to address these problems. But more importantly, to me, is the newcomers from different disciplines. They need to know what we're dealing with, what the industry is dealing with, and it should be an awareness that starts at school. So the limitations and problems should be addressed by the universities, along with their support for solutions to these problems, so that the youth, when they see these challenges or the nature of this work, they would be more familiar to the situation. So that would help.
disipline altını çizmek
Again,
istiyorum. Yani
we
tek
should
bir
act in a
uzmanlık alanı
multidisciplinary
önemli.
fashion.
Hani belli bir alanda
Yes,
problem
specialization is
çözebilmek önemli
important.
ama
Problem
uzmanlık
solving
yapay
skills in a given
zekanın da
area is important, but
kullanımının mutlaka artık bütün
with
disiplinler
the
için olmazsa
emergence of
olmaz
AI,
olacağı düşünüldüğünde
and since it's going to be
disiplinler
indispensable
arası
for all
problemlerin
disciplines,
çözümüyle ilgili
interdisciplinary
kabiliyetleri olan ya da
capabilities
işbirliği ve adaptasyon açısından
or capabilities regarding collaboration and adaptation would be very valuable, both in terms of the existing staff as well as the newcomers.
Bir diğer konu olarak kadın iş gücünün bu sektörlere
Another
daha
issue is
yoğunluklu
increasing
olarak
female
kazandırılması
participation
bence
to
ülke olarak da
workforce in
dünya
these
olarak da
sectors.
gündemimizde olan bir konu
That is a
olmalı.
hot topic
Burada,
that we should tackle.
henüz kazandırılmamış bu kapasitenin buraya
So
ciddi
this
şekilde katkı
capacity,
sağlayacağını düşünüyorum.
when
Türkiye
tapped
olarak,
into,
dünya olarak
will
yine
contribute
teknisyen,
greatly.
kademesinde ciddi açıklarımız var.
We also
Buraya,
lack a lot of
eğilimimiz
technicians,
gerekiyor.
both in
Bir taraftan da
Turkey
bütün,
and
yeni
globally,
gelecek,
and
hep
also
beraber keyifle bu bahsettiğimiz değişiklikleri gerçekleştireceğimiz bu temiz enerji geçişi ve
also
sürdürülebilirlik
in terms of this
ve
green
iklim tarafında da
transition,
umarız,
sustainability,
geri dönüşü,
and the
sağlayacak şekilde değişiklikleri yapacağımız işlerin anlamını da daha net
climate
anlatmamız
situation. I mean,
gerekiyor
all of
ki,
these
hakikaten
issues
o
should be
heyecanı,
explained more
enerjiyi
clearly so
hem
that the
şu anda
newcomers will
çalışan
have the same
arkadaşlarımıza hem de
enthusiasm and
yeni gelecek
excitement
yeteneklere daha
as
güzel
we
bir
do.
şekilde aktarabilelim.
Buyurun Mehmet Bey.
Teşekkür ederim. Şimdi ben işin açıkçası kendi sektörüm açısından
For my sector, I could say that we are all interconnected with each other, and I think university, public institutions and private institutions are very much important. Their relations are very crucial. So what do we expect from them? If we can define our expectations and the needs of the sectors, I think universities can raise students in this respect. Well, we have to choose the work for the person, and we have to choose the person for the correct or the right work. Well, I'd like to talk about internship programs, because during these long-term internship programs, students can be very crucial. Well, I believe these internship programs are like some opportunities for giving us the capacity, and scholarship mechanism is important. The opportunity, quality, and the scholarships are very, very important, because even though some students have a certain capacity, unless they are supported with scholarship during their university years, they can be in huge troubles and they can have big difficulties. In terms of equality of opportunity, there should be proper scholarships from the public and the private institutions for better human resources, and students should witness in the era that they live in. This total quality cannot be gained from the technicality only, but on the humane values. For having this total capacity and quality, universities should be used very well. And well, you've touched upon this issue before me. Well, I could say this for my own sector. I know this because I've experienced this by myself, and I can observe this in my company. Women should be employed, but it's not only about employment, but women should be in the decision-making positions. When that's the case, it could have benefits on the enterprise for elegance, for occupational health and safety, and for operational betterment. I could say this: we have tracks of 250 tons, Hitachi tracks, and the first woman operator, by the way, years ago when I was in the US, I saw them. Women operators were employed. We took the decision, and everybody resisted against this decision, even the managers in the mine. But then I won this, because I said we would do this, and we did this. And in the radio, in the dispatching systems, operators were males. Well, in this male-dominant environment, the way that they communicate with each other changed. They are now saying please to each other because there is a woman there. They know that they cannot use the slang words. For that reason, I believe that women employment is very crucial. Geology and mining might not look like this, but when opportunities are given to women and when women are employed as decision makers, they could create huge difference. I wanted to underline this fact. We have touched upon this already. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Son olarak ben de bir notla
Last but not least, I'd like to say this as well. Well, in the development of human resources as institutions, as schools, universities, public institutions, we do something incomplete. We do not spend time on futuristic works. Well, futuristic works are very crucial in the human development, especially during change periods. Specifically, youngsters might feel they are just not catching up with the rest. Like fear of missing out, fear of becoming obsolete, FOMO, FOBO. Once they feel it, I believe the biggest contribution that we can create is that we are preparing them for the future. But for us to prepare our youngsters to the future, in terms of future readiness, we need to be equipped with knowledge and information, and this could only be possible through futuristic works. What kind of human resources are going to be needed in the future? What kind of technologies and skills are going to be needed? For this, you have to come up with some curriculum and working methodologies. I think we have to focus and concentrate on this. I hope that our youngsters are going to be much more prepared for the future and they could reach to a better quality. Well, yes, anticipatory works are attached importance to Sabancı University. I know this. We took part in them a couple of months ago, and I'd like to thank our panelists for their valuable opinions. Thank you so much for your patience, and I'd like to thank ICAC for this very beautiful event. Thank you so much for this organization. This is the end of our event. I hope 2026 will be very hopeful and happy for all of us. Thank you so much.